2022. This is the regular meeting of the City of Asbury Park Zoning Board of Adjustment. Tonight, Mr. Daniel Harris will be presiding as chairman. Mr. Harris, will you please call us to order?
Call to order. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and the Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and municipal website. All notice are on file with the board secretary. Official action may be taken on the following matters before this board. Fire exits are located on the east and west sides of the council chambers as well as the back of the building. I will ask everyone with a cell phone or other device to kindly silence your device for the duration of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded by APTV. Mr. Mayor, please take the roll call.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Daniel Harris?
Here.
Brittany Ashman?
Here.
Tim Sledge?
Here.
Jill Potter is recused. Wendy Glassman is recused. Bonnie Knapp?
Here.
Russell Lewis is recused. Christopher Avalone is recused. And finally, joining us tonight is Barbara Krizak from the Planning Board.
Here. Special guest
A
appearance.
special guest.
Okay, tonight is City by the Sea. Vets, Thomas, please forgive me if I mess up your name, Calta. Thank you. I hate to mess up people's names. 1411 Memorial Drive, Block 2303, Lot 6, R1 zone. Mr. Beekman, do we have jurisdiction to proceed?
Mr. Harris, I have looked at the mailings and the Asbury Park Press affidavit of publication provided by Mr. Kennedy, and it does appear that notices were appropriately sent, and the board does have jurisdiction to hear the matter. One other thing I just wanted to put on the record. Good evening, Ms. Kurzak. This application, because we did not have enough members for the Board of Adjustment because of recusals, pursuant to the statute under the municipal land use law, Ms. Kurzak is attending as a member of the planning board so that we have a quorum for purposes of this application.
Okay, we'll now call Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
First, we want to justify your qualifications.
Sure. My name is Kevin Kennedy. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and I'm very happy and honored to be here tonight. My office is in Middletown. It's been some time since I've been before the zoning board, as I recall, and it's certainly been a longer time before I've been before the zoning board in a live capacity. So it is glad to be back, and I'm glad to see you all. I'm honored to come before you tonight on behalf of my client, Dr. Tom Caltabalata and City by the Sea vet. We are respectfully requesting use variance and bulk variance.
Accept your credentials first.
I'm an attorney for the applicant. I've been an attorney since way too long, since 1990, from Seton Hall Law School, and I've appeared as the applicant's attorney a number of occasions before Asbury Park Zoning Board and Planning Board, and I'm also fortunate enough to represent some other zoning boards and planning boards. So I'm here tonight on behalf of my client as the legal representative.
Okay, then you've been in front of the city before. We accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Well, he won't be testifying. He's the attorney for the applicant, so.
I wish I could testify, but I won't be able to. But I am here, and we are requesting use variance and bulk variance approval to operate a veterinary facility at the 1411 Memorial Drive site. And a couple of points real briefly that I wanted to point out. Number one, Dr. Tom, my client, operates an existing veterinarian facility a mere 1.5 blocks from this particular site. Number two, my client, Dr. Tom, is a well-known and well-respected commodity in that he already operates a veterinary facility in Asbury. And he is the contract purchaser of this particular property, and this building already exists. So we are not demolishing and constructing a new building. This is an existing building which is going to be renovated and retrofitted. In short, I would say it's a quintessential example of an adaptive reuse of a building. And I have what will, I believe, and I hope you also will find, is an exciting list of witnesses to bring to you tonight, all designed to advise you as to the operational details of the proposed veterinary practice. I do not have animals, so I was fascinated to learn as much as I did about the veterinary practice. My witnesses will talk to you and hopefully impress you regarding the architectural details of the proposal, regarding the engineering details of the proposal, traffic-related details of the proposal, and also the planning-related details, so that we hope we can convince you that this application can be granted without causing any substantial detriment to the public good. In advance, I appreciate your time and consideration. And if I could just to touch base on one more thing that Mr. Beekman just brought up, on a procedural note, we are in sort of a procedural abyss. Actually, Jeff, I don't have to say sort of, I think I say it is a procedural abyss. Because my client is a well-respected and established veterinarian in this city, he has some relationships with a number of the board members, resulting, out of an abundance of caution, that some of the board members are going to have determined to recuse themselves. So that, and with that recusal, there's a statute that allows the zoning board to borrow members from the planning board. And to the chair of the planning board, I thank you for volunteering your time to come here tonight. But as a result of this, we find ourselves in a really, for lack of a better legal term, a weird and unusual and, quite frankly, unpleasant intersection of a number of case law and statutory provisions and rules and regulations. So namely, there's 3 rules that are all conflicting here and not necessarily conflicting in a great place. So number 1, we have statutory requirements that say if anyone is coming before you for a use variance application, we need 5 affirmative yes votes. And then on the other hand, we have case law which suggests that someone who is applying for a use variance application is entitled to a full complement of 7 board members because of the 5 affirmative yes votes that are needed for an application to pass. And then we also have this statute which allows the zoning board, in case of conflict, to borrow from the planning board and vice versa. But it also says you can only borrow from the other board to the point of getting the bare minimum. So we're stuck, for lack of a better term, with 5 members. And Chris Beekman and Jeff Beekman have extensively researched that matter, and I appreciate all the work that they did. It's an odd situation. So even though most attorneys would not come before you with only 5, we're sort of in a tough situation. So as I sit before you tonight, I'm, I think, one of the few attorneys who feel that compelled to at least, for now, proceed with only 5 members. It's a tough situation. My client's in a tough position. Obviously, there's financial and legal and issues associated with his contract purchase and the development process, and that's clearly nothing involved in with the emotional cost and involvement of proceeding with an application. So, in conclusion, we hope that based upon the strength of this application and the strength of the testimony, all 5 of you will vote to approve this application, because the reality of it is, if we do not receive 5 affirmative yes votes, we're in a tough position. So, Mr. Acting Chairman, thank you for allowing me that time for that introduction. If I may, I'd like to call my first witness.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dr. Tom, come on up.
Would you like to swear him in, please?
I'll swear.
Swear him in, speak.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And for the record, if you can state your name and spell it as well?
Thomas J. Caltabalota. I'm assuming you only want the last one.
Last name.
Caltabilota.
Thank you.
And good evening.
Okay, I'm sorry, did you swear him in, or?
We did.
Got it. So, good evening and welcome, and just for record-keeping purposes, You are the managing member of City by the Sea Vet LLC, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you or an entity with which you are affiliated the contract purchaser of the 1411 Memorial Drive property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And for the record, because you are the face of this project, why don't you explain to the board who you are, what licenses you hold, where you're employed, and all that good stuff?
Sure. So, grew up in West Long Branch. Spent my life on the Jersey Shore. Jersey doesn't have a vet school, so following Rutgers, moved to Alabama, 4 years of veterinary training, moved back home, 1 year internship, Garden State veterinary specialist while living in Asbury Park. Fell in love with the city and how much, just saw how much it's changed over the years, but also just was always in love with it. But just the sheer number of animals here and people outside with their animals and seeing that there's no veterinary clinic really inspired me to be a part of this. So started out doing house calls in 2015, saved up some money and was able to take out a large loan to open our first business or our current location at 1309 Memorial Drive. And we've been there ever since.
All right. And just in terms of your current veterinary practice, what is that called?
City by the Sea Vet.
And where is it in relationship to the property that we're talking about tonight?
It's only about one and a half blocks maybe from you can see it from our current location. I like to point to it to show my staff what we're building.
And how long have you been at your current location?
Since 2018, April, I think, of 2018 it was.
And just for the record, because we're not here about your existing facility, but just for the record, what are some of the surrounding uses regarding your existing facility?
So we are a fully operational veterinary clinic. We'll see. I used to say we'd see anything that walked in the door. That's changed a little bit. Small animals, so cats and dogs, some pocket pets. Pocket pets would be chinchillas, rabbits, rats, things like that. We do surgeries. We do.
And actually, just one, if I could just interrupt.
Sure.
Just what are some of the surrounding uses where your current facility is? I think you share a wall with.
Oh, excuse me. Well, yes. It's a strip mall essentially. Multifunctional. We have a seafood place on one side. We have a smoke shop on the other side. Good relationship with all our neighbors. In fact, they bring their pets to us. No complaints as far as what we're doing is noises, smells, things like that.
And it is not just a neighbor, but it's a shared wall?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then your proposal is to open up this new facility and just talk briefly about why this new site, why Asbury, and why you're looking to move. What drew you to this building?
Well, the building is beautiful and historic. It's been sitting empty for a long time, and I can remember my wife telling me as we passed it several times that she was interested in that. And then as soon as we saw the for sale sign go up, that's kind of what we jumped on it. But regardless, we realized initially that we don't need to be on Cookman Avenue to be a part of Asbury Park, that there's a burgeoning side of the city that would still allow us to be a part of Asbury Park and the great people in it. Being 1.5 blocks from where we're at now, many of our clients come from that side of the railroad tracks on 3rd, 4th, 5th Avenue. And so most of them walking to our clinic, and so they could just walk. Probably, it might even be closer to them in many situations.
Okay.
But
And what I want to do is, because we need a use variance, I want to explain in detail some of the services that you're looking to provide at this site. Now, in our application materials, we had indicated that you perform veterinary clinic services, grooming, boarding, and daycare services. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So let's just go through a couple of them, and let's talk about the veterinary clinic. Just describe that. What does that involve? What type of things does that involve?
So we see wellness and sick appointments throughout the day. We perform procedures on anesthetized animals. We do drop-off appointments for folks that can't come in during the day. We are full-scale veterinary clinic with X-ray and other diagnostic capabilities in-house. But we are not an emergency facility. We open our doors and we close our doors. We turn our phones off, and we send folks to a 24-hour care facility.
And what is a real basic, simple question that I didn't know the answer to, are you just dogs and cats? Are you horses and pigs? And what is your practice?
So basically anything except farm animals. We do reserve the right to refer folks to a local exotic specialist, but pretty much just cats and dogs. But we leave it up to our veterinarians to decide if they want to see pocket pets. Never horses, never farm animals.
And what type of procedures would typically be involved with in a given day at your office?
Mostly spays and neuters on pets for population control, but we also do a lot of dentistry. I do a lot of soft tissue procedures. I pretty much don't really limit myself. I'm always trying to learn new procedures, and I encourage my staff to do so as well. But anything over our head, we do have a really good relationship with some of the local referral clinics, the specialty practices where we would feel comfortable referring to for things that we don't feel comfortable performing.
And these veterinary, what I'll call clinic services that you're just describing, you currently provide those at your existing Asbury site, correct?
Yes, sir.
And just in terms of appointments for the veterinary clinic, is it just a drop-by, random, or is there appointments that are scheduled?
Yeah, so 99% of the time we have appointments. We do see emergencies that come flying through the door at some time throughout the day if needed, but most appointments are scheduled. With COVID during those times, and just with the uptick in how many animals were acquired by new pet owners, and in addition to their current pets, we are just overwhelmed, and so we had to open up our schedule to also drop off appointments, which has been helpful. So if folks can't make their appointments, or if there's no appointments available, we will allow drop-offs so that we could see the pet either in between appointments or on lunch breaks, or if an appointment doesn't show up.
And then a typical appointment, barring something unusual, would last how long?
Typically they're about a half hour. Anything longer than that will generally hold on to the pet for further diagnostics so that the pet owner isn't just sitting up front twiddling their thumbs, and then we'll give them a call. And
speaking of that, do the pet owners stay or do they leave?
I mean, most of the time they stay, because most of the time we're done with what we need to do within a half hour or less.
Okay.
A lot of times I can get appointments in 15, 20 minutes, but then there's the time of taking notes, et cetera. So.
And are there any outside activities associated with the veterinary clinic use?
No, sir.
And just basically, how do you schedule the appointments, in increments of?
Generally every half hour with breaks in between. We try to concentrate the drop-offs all at one time so that we're not overwhelming our staff and tying up the phones and reception area.
And let's talk about another element of your proposed operation, grooming. Why don't you, just for the record, describe what grooming is?
So grooming essentially is the once every 4 to 6 weeks, or sometimes more commonly, the pet haircut and pet bathing for some pets.
And you do not perform that service at your facility now, correct?
We will perform it under rare circumstances where the pet requires sedation, but very limited.
Okay. And I guess, why are you looking to do it now?
Well, a lot of clients, first of all, they love that service. I don't think that they love to sedate their pet, but they're being turned away from other groomers because they can't work with their pet for whatever reasons. And so, yeah, just many of our clients have actually asked us about expanding to that possibility or that role as well.
And what about, is the grooming service available for any dog, or is it just for your existing patients, client?
So we wanted to offer it exclusively to our patients, our clients.
So there has to be some type of relationship
Yes, sir.
between you and the pet owner.
Mm-hmm.
And are the grooming appointments scheduled by appointment?
Yes, sir.
And how long would a typical grooming appointment last?
Generally about an hour per pet.
Okay. And do you have the luxury, and I guess would you have the luxury and be able to sort of coordinate, if you needed to, the grooming appointments so as to not conflict with surgical appointments?
Of course.
And are there any outside activities associated with the grooming aspect?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, we also had indicated that you would like to, if you are fortunate enough to receive approval, perform animal boarding services. So why don't you just, for the record, describe what that is, what that means?
So for the same reason, we were also seeing that a lot of our clients were asking us about potential for leaving their pets there overnight, which our current location is not zoned for. And so that was something with the new building that we wanted to have almost as like a quote-unquote one-stop shop for everything. We also see a lot of pet injuries, unfortunately, at some of these locations, and then they refer to us. And so a lot of pet owners are more comfortable already being at a location where on the other side of that wall is their veterinarian that they trust.
And I think you indicated that you do not perform boarding at your current place, really. And I thought in one of the conversations you had said that the clients have basically been asking you, hey, can you do this?
Yes, that is correct.
And again, would the boarding be available for any animal, or is it just animals with whom you have a relationship with the owners?
It would have to be a veterinary client-patient relationship.
So, and I guess that would also mean that the animals that would stay there, you would basically have a relationship and basically know that they're docile and...
That is correct.
And in terms of, would this involve overnight activities? I mean, overnight staying, boarding, lodging?
Yes.
And would you have an employee on site at night for that to supervise?
We would.
And now, in terms of what if there's an emergency in the night with a pet? Do you have a process?
So while we would have our phones off to any emergencies that would be calling in for any on-site emergencies, we would have on-call doctors every night of the week to pick up that phone from our employees for a boarding pet.
And are there any outside activities associated with your proposed boarding aspect?
No, sir.
And how many, in terms of the dogs, would there be an issue with barking and noise? How do you feel about that, or what's your answer to that?
So we've worked with our current architect and our plans to address that with the insulation in the walls. And we do have a plan for sound and sound reverberation for barking, so that we are friendly to our neighbors. Currently, again, we share walls with our neighbors, and I've gone to the other side of those walls and I don't hear dogs barking. So we've done a good job so far, and I plan to carry that over to the new location.
And we're going to hear this from your architect momentarily, but and you alluded to this. Are there going to be noise-absorbing walls or special features with the walls?
Yes.
And obviously, if you have an employee overnight, the animals are not going to be ignored. There's going to be someone there to play with them, care for them, feed with them, and provide them with attention, correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Chairman, I had asked my client, I said, well, happy dogs don't bark. And he said, no, dogs bark. So I have to learn that. And again, I think this is important. You have, with the shared walls that you're currently in, you have not had operational issues with your neighbors. And let's talk about another service that we talked about daycare, doggy daycare, I guess, for lack of a better word. Why don't you just generally describe what that is?
So, especially in Asbury Park, it's a busy community. A lot of pet owners are working long days, maybe don't necessarily feel like they have enough time to designate for their pet's exercise. So the daycare option is nice because we will take that off their hands. We also, discuss how exercise is such a huge part of a pet's behavior and behavioral changes as they grow. We saw a lot of this with COVID and a lot of people just being at home and not really leaving their house. So daycare offers the option of allowing us to kind of take that socialization side and behavior side off their hands so that their pets get exercise. When they come home, they have a pretty worn out pet that's just sleeping on the couch with them, and it enhances that human-animal bond.
And let's shift gears and get away from the services that you're looking to provide, and let's talk about employees. I want this board to understand your proposed operation. And could you just describe the general types of employees that would be associated with your facility?
Sure. So we have a team of receptionists. We have a team of veterinary nurses and assistants that do a lot of the blood draws and administration of medications. We have a veterinary team, which, go to extensive training to get where they are. And then in addition to that, we will obviously have groomers, pet handlers, and that pretty much rounds out our team.
May I ask how many full-time and how many part-time employees?
Generally, right now, we only have 2 part-time employees and they're 2 vet students. So everybody else is full-time.
How many is that?
Currently or proposed?
Currently, sir.
Currently?
Yes, sir.
We have four full-time equivalent veterinarians.
And what would your projection be if you go forward?
What would my
Relocated?
Yeah, so I would hope to eventually expand to 5 to 6 veterinarians again, or maybe more. But right now we're having a difficulty expanding to that number just based on the limited size of the space that we're
And your hours?
Our current hours?
Yes, sir.
We are open from 9 a.m. to, we'll have our phones turned on at 9 a.m. However, we have drop-offs before that. We close our doors at 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Friday, it's 9 till 5. Saturday, it's 9 till 3. Sundays, we are closed.
You know what, just if I could go back to the one issue, I think you raised an important point about number of employees. Because I think this is going to be important in terms of the overall mix and the overall analysis of the parking situation. I would like you to state for the record the maximum number of employees who are going to be on site at any one time. And I guess just go through each, the maximum number of doctors on site at one time, maximum number of nurses, et cetera.
Yeah. So at any given time, we start with the number of veterinarians, essentially 4 full-time veterinarians. I'd say at the busiest time of day, we'd have 4 working. That's usually 1 to 2 doing procedures in the treatment area, while 2 to 3 are actually seeing appointments. So usually we'll have about 4, give or take, throughout the day at any given time. Each of those veterinarians would have 2 dedicated support staff, usually a technician and an assistant. So if we have 4 veterinarians, that means we have 8 support staff total with those veterinarians. In addition, 1 lab tech and 1 float tech to kind of round things out so that they're helping out with the flow. We usually need help with x-rays, we usually need help with blood draws. You need somebody holding the animal while the other one's pulling blood, that kind of thing.
So in terms of numbers, and again, I don't want to pinpoint you, but I want to present enough information that the board feels comfortable in approving an application. Maximum number of doctors on the site at any one time would be what?
Probably 4.
4. Mm-hmm. And maximum amount of nurses on the site at any one time would be?
Probably about 8.
8. Mm-hmm. Maximum amount of receptionists at the site at any one time?
4.
You talked about maximum amount of lab/pharmacy people on the site at any one time?
Yeah, 1 to 2 there.
Okay. And then I think previously we talked that there might be 1 or 2 more people there on just a shift crossover?
Right. So, on the grooming side, we obviously have a groomer. And then on the boarding and daycare side, we'd probably have 1 employee per every 10 pets. So we're probably looking at about 20. So 2 more people to take care of those 20 animals, that if there are.
So do you feel comfortable in what you just said, saying that if the application is approved, in the maximum worst case scenario, there'd be about 20 people, employees at one time?
That's what I'd assess, yes.
And I think you said that would be, when we were talking earlier in the week, I think you said that would be the maximum.
Right. So earlier in the day, there's significantly less. Later in the day, there's significantly less. It's just in the middle of the day, there's going to be some overlap, and that's probably the most that there would be.
And, it just, as a shift, because I forgot one thing, I believe you're in the Asbury Park Urban Enterprise Zone, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Why don't you say what that means legally and functionally and practically?
So it's been nice to be part of the Urban Enterprise Zone, but it also allows us to establish our business in an underserved part of the community, but also we're held to hire employees within Asbury Park, and we do. Probably about a quarter of our staff currently are from Asbury Park. Many of them just walk to work, and so that's been really nice having them as part of the community.
Okay. And in terms of going back to the employee situation, just generally, in terms of the employee shifts? I know there is a crossover, and it's not always the easiest answer to provide, but generally speaking, what are the general employee shifts?
So we have basically it's an early shift and a late shift. Some of our employees have chosen to work longer double shifts and then enjoy a 3-day weekend. But generally, we'll have a few employees that show up early for drop-offs to start the day with answering emails and calls. When we start appointments, more employees fill in. So in general, those that show up for 7 to 8 a.m. would typically end their shift around 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and those who would start their shift later would typically get there at noon to 1 and close out usually around 8 p.m.
And then you might have some crossover.
Correct.
And in terms of, and I know I think I interrupted you, in terms of the hours of operation, and I know it's difficult to pinpoint, but it's important, and I think the board is going to want to hear that, and it is important in a use variance application, and knowing that hours of operation are always subject to market forces and client needs. Generally speaking, and I'm going to have you answer this in two ways, but generally speaking, in terms of being open to the public, what are your general hours of operation?
So I would consider our hours of operation to be 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. However, an hour before those times, that's essentially when the phones are on and off. However, for that reason, we've scheduled drop-off appointments to be set up before the phones turn on, before our first appointment, so that there's so that our employees can dedicate themselves to that function and that purpose before hours to get those pets in, and that kind of helps the flow of traffic into and out of the hospital.
So is it safe, based upon all of our conversations, is it safe to say that generally Monday through Friday, for the public maximum would be 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.?
Yes.
And then on Saturday, I know you're not envisioning working a full day, but Saturday would be what?
Generally 9 to 3 p.m. is
Okay.
our hours of operation for the veterinary side.
And Sunday, you're typically, at this point, you anticipate being closed.
Yes.
But you want to reserve your right, because
I can't get any of my employees to come in on a Sunday to want to work.
Right. And again, Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that those are the hours when the facility is open to the public. As he indicated, there's going to be someone there at night.
Yes.
And we'll get into that momentarily. Let's talk about loading and unloading, because you're in a zone where this is not permitted. So what, as a practical matter, what do you need to be delivered to you?
So it's mostly just medical equipment, supplying on gauze and syringes, needles, obviously a ton of pharmaceuticals. We order everything on a Tuesday. Generally, everything comes in on Wednesday. Maybe one or two more things might file in on 2 days after. Basically, it's a UPS truck. He's in and out in 5 minutes. We don't sell dog food, which is nice, or any pet food. So there's, it's not like a big 40-pound bag of dog food that's coming into our clinic, and that could take an hour. It's pretty much 5 minutes, so it doesn't really obstruct traffic at all.
And how frequently do you have deliveries? Is it once a day, once a week?
Generally, it's 1 to 2 times a week.
Okay. And is that the same as your existing operations?
Yes.
And for the record, have there been any complaints about loading and unloading with your existing facility?
No complaints.
Let's talk about maintenance, cleanliness. How do you handle the cleaning obligations associated with your proposed facility?
So that was one thing that we really pride ourselves on, is that if you walk into our clinic, it does not smell like animals. It's something that to this day that we really get compliments about, and it's something that I want to maintain. And to do that is not easy. Our staff disinfects every room, every surface, double that during times of COVID, because we don't want it to smell like an animal facility. And I've worked in some really dingy veterinary clinics growing up and coming into to being a vet, and I saw what I don't want it to be like. In fact, we're soon to be hopefully AHA accredited, which is only something that about 15% of veterinary clinics attain in their lifetime, and it's a stringent list of 900 criteria that we have to follow that just hold us to a higher standard. And that's not required. That's just something that we've chosen to do to go above and beyond so that we can be a better clinic.
And in terms of, is it safe to say that who you are, what your practice is, your clients want, demand, deserve, need clean facilities and clean operations?
Yes, 100%.
Is it safe to say that a dirty facility is bad for business?
100% yes.
And when you talked about the AAHA, which are veterinary accreditation standards, is cleanliness a factor that they consider?
Yes.
And what about outside? How do you clean? Does anything outside need to be cleaned? Is it just regular routine maintenance?
Well, no, I believe that outside is a big important part of, infectious disease spreading especially. So we also maintain the outside.
And why don't we just, in terms of next, garbage, I'm assuming you have medical supplies that you have to make special arrangements to dispose of.
Yes, that is correct.
And you comply with private facilities and take care of that?
Yes.
And presumably animal waste, same way?
Yes.
And then other routine garbage is in accordance with cities' prevailing policies?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, what about security? How do you handle security at the facility?
Security is pretty important because we do have controlled drugs on site, and we take that very seriously. We have coded locks on all our doors. We have a really good relationship with the Asbury Police Department. We have motion sensors. We have security alarm. So we considered it a pretty secure place. We also have panic buttons throughout the clinic in the event that we need to activate any kind of silent alarm.
Okay. And I know we touched base on this. I just want to touch base on it one more quick time. You talked about this AHA accreditation, and I think you're being somewhat modest. I understand that it's not a real common thing.
No.
And
AHA is the American Animal Hospital Association. It was originally made by 7 veterinarians that just took it upon themselves to, this was in the early 1900s, to basically go above and beyond and establish the criteria of what the perfect veterinary hospital looks like. Because right now there are no current standards. You can get your veterinary degree, and as long as you are following the veterinarian's oath, you're free and clear. However, AHA establishes guidelines and a set of standards, and they release them to the veterinarians, kind of like a consensus statement on what are the best practices. And so AHA accredited facilities basically follow these guidelines to hold that very highly and follow those standards.
And this really isn't relevant to anything, but I just found it interesting. In terms of, we're going to have the architect to testify momentarily about soundproofing and things like that, but you also had indicated that it's not the equivalent of HIPAA regulations, but you have to have the facility designed to basically respect the animals and the owners'
Correct. Yeah, we also
rights.
pride ourselves in being what's called fear-free, and that's built into the design of the practice. But a big part of that is also just privacy. We have very sensitive conversations with pet owners about very difficult subjects, for example, euthanasia. And while, I don't think that there are actual HIPAA laws for pets, there are ethics behind what we do, and we try to keep those conversations private. And we built that into our current practice, and we plan on taking that into our next practice. As far as fear-free goes, what that means is basically separating the cats from the dogs, separating the sounds. Half of our pets that come into the clinic are cats, and obviously they're very fearful. So we've taken it upon ourselves to build our current clinic so that they feel safe, and that's built into the design.
And let's, Mr. Chairman, I am finishing up here, and I appreciate the time you've given me. Let's talk about the need for a veterinary in the great city of Asbury. Obviously, you've indicated your operation is here now. To your knowledge, are there other vets in Asbury?
Not within the city limits of Asbury Park.
Are there other groomers, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Other animal boarding facilities?
I don't believe so.
And speaking of Asbury, just for the sake of it, from where do your clients generally hail?
So generally about 30 to 40% of our clients currently are coming to our clinic. Many of them are just walking to our clinic. I'll see a lot of them just on my drive on my way to work.
I guess that makes sense. They can walk or bike or Uber.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the answer, because you said, where do the people come from?
Asbury Park.
Well, so you have 100% Asbury
Oh,
Park?
no, 40, I'm sorry, I thought I said 30 to 40% generally.
All right, 40%, where's everybody else coming from?
From the surrounding area, a lot of Interlake and a lot of Allenhurst, Ocean Township communities. Our furthest client, I think, was coming from Freehold, generally. So from the surrounding areas, everything else is pretty much spread out.
And in terms of, we have, Mr. Chairman, one of our witnesses is Allison Coffin, a planner, and she's going to talk about the overall impact. But with your indulgence, I'd like to just ask Dr. Tom here a couple of questions about impact on his level. So if this application is approved tonight, I want to convince the board, but the impact will be for the affected neighbors and the surrounding neighbors. I want to know what the neighbors are going to see, what they're going to hear, what they're going to smell, what they're going to experience. So let's just talk about see. What are the neighbors going to see if your application gets approved?
So they should only see animals coming and going into the building, no activity outside.
And what are they going to smell? Are they going to smell an animal facility?
They should not.
And what are they going to hear? Are they going to hear barking dogs?
Not coming from our clinic.
And again, you've indicated that you didn't have any complaints with your existing operations. And then just in terms of, I know the answer to this, but just for the sake of asking it on the record, if this application were to be approved, how anxious are you, and what would be your time frame for trying to get this facility up and running?
We would start building immediately this year.
So, Mr. Chairman, every client I have always says ASAP, so that would be the answer. And I guess last, do you have any other concluding remarks? This is my last part of the direct testimony. Do you have any concluding remarks before we turn it over to board?
Just very short and very quick. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the zoning and planning board members for their time tonight. I know that we'll be doing anything else, but you've chosen to volunteer time and being here and hearing us. This process is, I believe, very fair and worthy of our ambitious goals. I grew up here on the Jersey Shore, and Asbury Park has always been a very special place for me. City by the Sea Vet was a dream. Our mission, help pets by educating pet parents, strengthen the human-animal bond. I believe we are only improving our mission with this expansion, and I hope you will approve our plans for this reason. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further direct testimony from the applicant at this time.
All right, do our board members have any questions of this witness?
I do. If you don't mind. You said a couple times that there's no outside activity. How can you have a daycare and boarding without having any, they have to go out, right? So where will you be taking the pets to go out and do their business? With daycare, I imagine you have to let them out, stretch their legs, run around off leash. So where and how would this take place?
So on our architectural plans, we're going to have separate play areas that we most likely will be able to do that for the animals.
Inside?
Mm-hmm.
But then, they have to go out, right?
I wouldn't say they have to go out. I think that there's a lot of daycare facilities that have done this successfully without taking their pets outside.
So you'll be having an area inside where they can go to the bathroom. And if you are, so you said there's going to be about 20, you can board about 20 animals?
We can board more. We calculated safely per employee, per staff member watching these pets, that we would feel comfortable with one employee, 10 animals per one employee. And that doesn't necessarily mean 10 animals are going to be playing at one time. That was just a criteria or something that we came up with to just be able to intervene if there's any problems while daycare operations are going on.
So first I want to say I'm a huge animal lover. You have a great reputation in town. I know a lot of people that use you, and I've heard only good things. So, and I'm an animal lover. I'm just I just find it a little odd that these dogs won't be going out at all. And also, you had said that they would have people that are boarding them or daycare will are gonna be, I guess, they're your clients.
Mhm.
I always thought it was a great idea. I think daycare is needed. I live down by the dog beach. A lot of times people come during the summer and they don't realize the dog beach, you can't bring your dogs on the beach in summer hours. And now it's like, what do we do with our dogs? So there is a need for it.
Yes.
But these people aren't your clients.
Right.
How do we know that at some point you're not gonna say, you know what, there's a whole untapped market out there that we can now take? So now you'll be taking more than 20 dogs. You know, how can we, you know, I don't know. I guess they're just unanswered questions that are going in my head.
I could, obviously, I appreciate your concern for that. I would see that, how that could be a concern. You know, I think that just based on our standards and sticking to them, I could only see that ending up disastrous and hurting our reputation if we did that.
I have all my answers.
Okay, how long are you going to be, when you say you're gonna board dogs, how long do you board them for? Like, can people go on vacations and leave their dogs with you?
Generally, yeah, I don't know that we've established a time limit for it, but we would plan to have someone there overnight every night of the week anyway.
And even though you are keeping dogs for long periods of time, you don't have any dog walkers?
That would work at the clinic as well?
Yeah.
We do, but the operations would not extend to the outside of the building.
They walk the dogs inside the building?
Well, we have a play area for the dogs to kind of not need for the dogs to have to be walked outside.
Okay, but you don't have a dog run, am I correct?
A dog run?
Yes, sir.
We do.
You do inside?
Yes, sir.
Wow, this is unbelievable. Okay, now, one last question from me. Euthanizing dogs. I'm quite sure you do that also?
Unfortunately, yes, we do.
Okay, do you cremate them there?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, so once the dogs are put to sleep, for use of a better term, they are taken away and cremated, and I assume that people return to get their ashes, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, any other board members have any questions?
I do. I know that you'd mentioned that there's no barking. I'm just guessing that just by dog owners that are out there, you're coming out of your car, they see somebody, there's gonna be barking. So there will be barking outside, even though you're talking about the in and out of the building, and chances are, let's be frank, that someone before coming into your facility will probably walk their dog outside of your facility. So there'll be an increase in the amount of dog walking, not you're doing it, but the owners will probably be doing it. Just an assumption. The other thing is that you mentioned that there's going to be, there are people going, that the animals will be there at night. Where will that person be that is watching these animals? Because there's no place, I'm assuming that they don't have to be up.
The employee has to be
Yes.
up? They would be required to be.
They would have to be up.
Yes, there's no sleeping.
So there is no, let me just nap somewhere.
We would have, no, and we would have dedicated staff that obviously wouldn't work during the day to pick
Right.
up those shifts overnight.
Okay, so there's no need for a place for them to be while they're watching these.
I wouldn't want them to be too comfortable overnight.
Well, I'm just saying, that's why I didn't understand.
Mhm.
Because you do have the availability of 15 dogs and 17 cats. That's significant, and I understand that that's probably for growth,
Yes.
potentially. Okay, everything else that I have I'm hoping will be answered by other people, because you didn't touch on it. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
Yeah, I have two questions. So the AHA award, is that something that you're going after, or you've already gotten?
So we're currently undergoing the evaluation process. We have our inspection May 9th, and I'm told by our the team that's accrediting us that we should have no problem passing, because we've already gotten this far.
Is that something you have to reapply for? If they were to grant this?
I think you just need to be reevaluated. I don't think they do as thorough of a inspection as they're doing right now, but you need to resubmit an application. I believe it's every 2 years.
And in those credentials, or I guess the classifications, does it cover boarding and all these new services that you're going to be providing?
No, it does not.
So
It's strictly to the veterinary side of things.
Are you aware of other boarding animal, hospitals that, similar, if we were to grant this application, you don't have the outside, and what they've done? So I shared the concerns of my board members that dogs need to be outside.
Right.
Are there windows, which I know we can talk to your architect, but what have other places similar to this done when you don't have it? You're in a city and you don't have a big yard.
The same as we're doing. It's kind of amazing how, if we're going to make it look very much like an outside facility with the fake grass and everything. Believe it or not, a house-trained animal, just based on smells, typically will go on this type of surface. Will urinate and defecate on this surface just based on the interaction and picking up even the very small sense of other animals. My dogs, when they come to the clinic, no matter how well behaved they are peeing on everything, and it doesn't smell like a clinic yet. They're still just marking their territory, I guess. But I believe that most of these facilities that don't have access to outside outdoors are doing the same thing that we're doing.
Thank you. And then you mentioned that some of your workers walk or bike, your like technicians and even some of your clients. Would you say, how much would you say actually drive?
Percentage-wise?
Yeah, both clients and your staff.
My staff currently, 4 of them. The ones that live in Asbury Park generally will walk or bike. Clients, I couldn't give you an accurate percentage. I tried running a report and I couldn't specify exactly where on this side of Asbury Park those folks would walk. But to throw out a number, I would probably say 20%.
Only 20% drive?
I'm sorry, walk.
Oh, so 80%.
Yes.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I know this might be stretching the questions, but right now, different spots, so it's not under question, but it's similar neighborhoods, a block and a half away.
Yes.
Do you ever have issues with the amount of driving in cars at that location?
At the current location?
Yes.
There's a lot of folks that the parking is a little bit weird at the angle, so I think backing out of those spaces gets a little bit difficult.
Is that your existing facility?
Yes, at the existing facility. But that's really the only complaint, and that's mostly been that the cars going by as these folks are trying to back up, it could be an issue. It's the only real complaint or issues that I've seen.
Do any of your clients have to park in the nearby streets similar to this site if we were to grant it? Would they be having to park, to Barbara's point, walking, increase of foot traffic and animal traffic on the streets adjacent?
I've seen a few clients park on the side streets of, that's 5th, on the south side of our building. And then, there's also the Booskerdoo parking lot too, which folks who park there and just walk their dogs down. I haven't seen it really be a foot traffic problem. But
Have any of your neighbors or nearby business owners complained about?
No, and in fact, they have water bowls out there for them, so they're supporting it. I think if anything, it's driven traffic to their businesses.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay, any more questions? A couple more. What are your Friday hours again?
Friday hours currently are, we close a little bit early, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock now. Okay. My concern is the fact that the high school does have activities on Friday evenings, especially football season, which would impact parking. Also, the apartment house next door to you. Most of that parking is outside, so do you anticipate a problem for your clients parking over there, being that that's just a large
I
building?
don't anticipate this being a problem, but these might be better questions for our parking experts there.
Okay. Board professionals, please. Or what, you had a question?
I'm just trying to get an understanding. My understanding is the activity around your business will be from 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday, and also Saturday from 7, 8 till probably 3, 4 o'clock, because you got employees. Is that understanding correct?
It's fair.
Okay. And my question is, I know you said a lot of your 20% of your employees bike or walk. The rest of them, which would be about 15 people during the hike, where are they going to park? You have them parking on the street?
On the street.
for professionals?
I'm going to ask you a few questions. I may have missed something, so I apologize if I missed it. I didn't write down a bunch of things here. So, for grooming, you said it's 1 hour per pet. How many pets are groomed per day and per week?
So generally, I'd say we'd probably do 5 in the morning, 5 at night, or 5 in the afternoon with a break in between somewhere.
So that's 10 a day.
I think so. I would hope that we could do 8 to 10 a day.
And boarding, I heard the number, what, 15 dogs, 17 cats?
And that kind of maxes. That's just what we have room for. I don't know that I would say worst case scenario. You know, when I say worst case scenario, busiest case scenario, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Busiest case scenario.
Yeah,
It's not bad. It's not a bad thing, right? And to the point about the activities that happen when an animal's boarded. Can you describe a little more about that? You talked about you have a run inside and they can, they can relieve themselves inside, right?
Yeah, the boarding.
So what happens, how does that all work? Or is it, I saw in the plans, it's small dogs and, or small animals, large animals. A little more detail on how that happens.
So it's going to be a little bit of a dance in the flow because, obviously the boarded animals, the daycare animals, and obviously the veterinary side of things are all going to be somewhat partitioned. But there's also going to be, it's not as if the daycare animals that come in for half day daycare are just going to be playing the entire time. There's probably going to be a bit of a cycling in of the boarded animals and the daycare animals. It's nice that we can separate the small animals from the big animals. Usually that's an owner preference, but it's also going to help partition those areas even further to separate animals if we need to. I think it also allows us the opportunity to designate our staff to control just a certain, maybe small number of animals at a time. Maybe as we learn their personalities, decide who wants to play together and who does really well together, and cycle out the ones that are more just needing the exercise and the potential one-on-one time, maybe even training time, so that we can work with them exclusively.
So you've got boarded animals, 15 to 17 of each cat or dog, and then you've got the daycare. So what is the maximum number of animals you would have between daycare and boarding that would be on site that would be partaking in these activities?
Yeah, that's where I think it's going to, obviously we need a kennel or a run or a cage for each of these animals, and we're limited to that 1750. I think that something that's not on the plans that we've thought about doing is also having almost like a separate area to move the animals so that we're not tying up every cage and every run in the office. But I would feel comfortable with 20 animals or 10 animals per employee, and if we had 2 on the daycare side of things, we would feel comfortable with 10 per. So I would say 20, a mix of 20 between daycare and boarding.
Okay, so it's not additive, it's 20 total.
That's what I would feel comfortable with, yeah.
Between daycare and the boarded animals.
Yeah.
In the application, it talks about exercise classes and training, and I didn't hear you say really.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed it, but.
No, I think that's something that we would hope to expand to. It would obviously be outside of the normal hustle and business hours that we have. It could also be something that's built into the current operations for some of the daycare animals as an option. That's what's also nice about the setup of the facility, to have those 2 areas, because we could maybe section off part of it so that if we had one of our employees that has an interest in training, they could work exclusively with those animals too. But it's just something that maybe down the road we might think about adding in. But we don't have any set plans for it right now.
And would that necessitate an additional employee or employees to do that above and beyond the folks that are already taking care of the daycare and the boarding and the grooming?
Possibly. We have a couple of employees now that do some training on the side, and we've had that discussion of expanding their role in the new clinic as potentially taking on that role.
So it could increase the number of employees? It could
potentially, yes.
Just a couple quick questions. You mentioned drop-offs and that the forms start at 9 a.m. but a lot of drop-offs occur before then. Is that just a preference, or is drop-offs limited to that early evening hour?
No, I think, again, with like the flow of traffic, a lot of this came about during COVID times with being an essential business. We were open during those times, but at the same time, didn't feel comfortable in these small exam rooms with clients. So, and adoption skyrocketed during COVID. So we did see a huge uptick in animals that were coming to the clinic. So in order to serve them, drop-offs were an option where if someone didn't show up for their appointment, then we would see a drop-off during that time, but otherwise between appointments. Because generally all appointments would be 30 minutes, but some of them might take 15 if it's just a suture removal or something very simple. We could use another 15 minutes to see that appointment, especially if it's something very simple. But yes, drop-offs as far as the setup or the flow of the clinic, we would try to concentrate them before the phones turn on, and then have pickups spread out throughout the day so that we can concentrate those as well. The other thing about drop-offs are they're not just sick or wellness appointments. Some of them are procedures that we're doing under anesthesia or sedation, and so those would also be concentrated at different times in the afternoon so that there's not they're not running into clients that are coming in to see their doctor for an appointment too.
And in terms of how the drop-offs work, do they occur? Would someone park their vehicle and bring their dog in, or is there an employee that goes out and greets them, or how does it all work?
So generally what we've done, because our phones aren't on, we've actually had them, we'll let them know to text us because the text messaging system will work through our phone. And that would alert the technician to go out. They would go over whatever the treatment plan is for the day, take their animal, and then they leave. Generally it's less than 5 minutes to drop off.
So someone actually comes out and brings the dog in?
Yes, so that's been something that we've worked out, is almost having like a concierge service so that they're basically controlling the flow of where everyone is, where every pet is, wherever appointment is, so that no one gets left behind. With this whole curbside thing during COVID, it was really easy we had some clients that didn't realize that they had to call when they got to the clinic, and they just hoped that we would come out and we were waiting 45 minutes. So something with the new clinic that we've thought about implementing is actually having someone standing out there greeting every client, checking them in, with the and we would all have radios on to alert the appointment is here. We're going to load them into room 1, whatever it is.
Okay. And then final question. I think you mentioned so the medical waste. I understand that's a kind of a separate deal from your regular refuse and recycling. Is the intention to use public refuse and recycling, or will that also be handled privately?
I believe we're looking at, currently we're private. I think the dumpster gets picked up twice a week. So we would do that as well.
This is a follow-up to that. Your plans don't indicate that you're going to have a dumpster in this one. You have a dumpster in your current location.
Correct.
How many square feet do you have in your current location?
3,000.
3,000, right? And so then this is going to be in the, what's this, 11,000?
Yeah, it's roughly 12.
But you're not going to have a dumpster.
No, the dumpster, at least at our current location, is really more for the other. We calculated how many bags of trash that we're actually producing that are going in that dumpster, and it's a pretty small amount. It really came out to, I think, just like a full can per day. So if we're picking up twice a week, this was a discussion with the engineer we thought that we could bring the cans to the curb twice a week if that was the case, or whatever we plan on doing. Better than having room for a dumpster.
Is the dumpster at your current facility shared amongst everyone in the? Okay.
Any other questions from professionals? Okay, we're going to open.
I have one
No
more.
problem.
So I know you spoke to this briefly, but what was the main reason you wanted to board the animals?
Just because we wanted to essentially have a one-stop shop for everything. We wanted to serve the community with everything that they might need for their pets. And so boarding, grooming, daycare just seemed like it was the obvious things that we could do to provide that service for them.
And I think Michael was asking this, but what would be in your like during work, of not being too many pets at one time? How many in the kennel, or how many in the daycare, and how many boarding at one time?
I could see us. I would suspect that it would be about 20 animals boarding and on the boarding side per time. I mean, that doesn't really include the cats because really there's not a lot of circulation into the play area. But I could see the date between the canine boarding and the canine daycare being about 20 animals.
And that's in total?
I think so. Yes.
I have one other, I'm sorry, are we finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
One last question. The animals now that you have when, say, someone drops them off for procedure or because they, you know, you're just gonna see them at some point during the day, where do those animals go to the bathroom?
We will take them out
Is
to
it back? In front or back?
in the front.
That dovetails with my question, because if you're having, 20, 30 animals there constantly, what do you do with all the poop? Just the garbage?
So we have biodegradable bags, we pick them up, we throw them in the trash.
I assume those bags are biodegradable.
I'm sorry?
I assume those bags are biodegradable.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on that, your plans show grass in the front yard along Memorial,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you'd be taking them?
Not at the current location. We don't plan on bringing animals
Okay.
outside at the current location. I'm sorry, at the proposed location.
Proposed location?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Not that nitrogen isn't good for grass.
Okay, this may be a question for the engineer, but I'm wondering, about the filtration system for the air quality inside.
It is a better question for the engineers, but currently I know that based on, I probably shouldn't even answer this and just leave this to them because I'm going to fumble around with it.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Anyone from the public? Okay, sir, please, name and address, please.
John LaFredo, 6th Avenue, Asbury Park. Doctor, you're going to more than double your employees.
I would say,
You have to.
based on what we can handle, I wouldn't say double.
And,
Say about a quarter.
and I'm sure everybody took a ride by 6th Avenue where this is proposed to see how everything was and how the traffic was. And there's absolutely no
You
parking
can't
there right
testify,
now.
only
Can't
questions.
I'm not testifying, I'm just asking a question.
Well, it's not,
Anyway.
you're asking him.
It
Let
has
me
to be
ask you,
directed to his
how many
testimony.
residences are by your place
Thanks.
now? How many homes? How many private family homes?
On the streets down 5th Avenue and Sunset?
Yeah, on Memorial, your place on Memorial,
Mhm.
that you're at your location now. How many single-family homes border your
Or on Memorial Drive?
office?
I'm not sure how many are on Memorial Drive right there.
I don't think anybody borders you. How many border you here at the new location?
I want to say 4 on the south side of the building, at least 4 or 5.
Right. And let me ask you something. You said that people are going to park on the street. Are you providing any off-street parking at all with your facility?
Providing off-street parking?
Are you providing off-street parking for your
No,
employees?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fredo. Anyone else? Any board members? Any additional questions? Professionals? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to bring Mr. Testa, our architect.
Okay, I'd like to take a break right now. Yeah, 5-minute break.
All right, can we get a motion for a 5-minute break?
Motion for a 5-minute break.
Thank you, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, 5-minute break. Daniel Harris,
Here.
Brittany Ashton,
Here.
Tim Flick,
Here.
Bonnie Knox,
Here.
Barbara Kurzak.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now call Mr. Michael Testa, which at this time will swear in, but we also want to swear in the professionals at this time. That
Mr. Testa, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could just state your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Sure. First name is Michael, last name Testa, T-E-S-T-A.
And I'll swear in our professional, the board professionals. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth for this application.
Yes.
Yes.
And again, well, we know our board professionals.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Testa, we'd like to hear your qualifications, sir.
Sure, I'm a graduate with a Bachelor of Architecture from New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1991, a licensed architect since 1996. Owner and principal of architectural firm Michael V. Testa since 2002, located in Manalapan, New Jersey. I've testified in multiple boards across the state. It's my first night here, which I'm very happy about. And that's pretty much it.
And just for the record, your licenses and certifications are current and up to date?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully ask that the board accept my client as a professional witness.
Yeah, no problem. You told you went to NJIT, I told it North Tech right around the
North
corner.
Tech, yes.
Very familiar with the school, very familiar.
Awesome.
All right, and Mr. Testa, just for the record, you're familiar with the application, obviously, correct?
Yes, I am.
And your office prepared the architectural plans?
Yes, we did.
And I know you were here for the testimony of our client, correct?
Correct.
Okay, why don't you take it over, and I'm just going to let you talk about the architectural features.
Kevin, just before we start, do we have any exhibits that need to be marked?
This one here,
Why don't you describe what that is?
Sure, it's a two-dimensional color rendering of all four facades of the building,
Prepared by,
prepared by our firm, Michael V. Testa Architect.
and is there a date on that?
No.
Why don't you put today's date on it, if that's okay, Jeff?
That's fine.
And I believe our board secretary would like a digital copy of that. You can send that to her tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
And would you like me to put your, actually, I'll wait until you put this on, I'm sorry.
So what I'd like to do is review the proposed floor plan, highlight some of the areas the board members had asked questions, and answer questions at the end. What we have here is an existing 11,900 square foot, one-story building. The building right now is empty, somewhat neglected and in disrepair. We visited the building at the onset of the project. We field measured it. The owner had an independent structural engineer come out and deemed the building to be structurally sound. So with that, we had the nice bones in the shell to proceed with the interior design. We anticipate the completion of the renovation. I believe there's some work going on now to kind of stabilize some of the brick failure and work inside. It's kind of left, but we're going to continue to complete the exterior of the building, repointing the brick, cleaning it, repairing it, the interior steel, roof, all repaired and brought back to its proper state. The interior of the building right now is pretty much wide open. There's different levels on the inside with the different floor slabs from previous uses. We're going to level out the interior of the building so it's one continuous floor area with the main front entrance on the left side, which is on Memorial. This area here is our main entrance. We have a ramp coming up to an elevated area because, again, the first floor is higher than the grade. Handicap accessible ramp brings us into the facility. The entire facility has been designed to be ADA compliant, handicap accessible throughout. Enter into the building into a large greeting area, which we call the grand lobby. From that point, you can either go left or right. The right, being the lower half, is pretty much where Dr. Tom indicated a lot of the medical tasks to be taking place. We have exam rooms, we have his office, surgery, and medical treatment areas. The waiting areas seem to be excessively large. Our experience, we've done 2 animal shelters, one for Helmetta Township, one for Woodbridge Township, and we completed the Backhoe Veterinary Clinic in Portland, Maine. So we have some experience with this. The space inside the waiting rooms are imperative, so that way sick animals aren't on top of each other. You keep the animals separated if need be. And it's light and airy spaces, so it keeps it a pleasant environment. Around the perimeter of the building, we have a lot of windows. So one of the questions earlier was the amount of sunlight in there. Those windows, a lot of them are boarded up. We're going to be taking the old windows out, putting back newer vertical windows to match the exterior look of the building. With that, the perimeter spaces. In the second half, the upper half here, is the area where we talked about the grooming, the boarding. You see, you enter into here, there's a small training area. We have a cat boarding area. We have a small dog play area, the large dog play area. The large dog play area is approximately 20 by 30 feet in length. There's enough room for a couple of devices for the dogs to run up and play on. We've completed a project in Somerville, New Jersey, which is 2 large apartment buildings where this is becoming a large amenity in the buildings. It's so popular that they're becoming these indoor dog parks, indoor play places. The basement in the apartment building was converted into a dog play area where they have it walled off. We have floor drains in there. The animals just run around together, and it's a very positive feedback from the tenants in the building. So this is a very common element in animal environments that we're seeing today in the design of these spaces. Adjacent along the back of the building, we have a dog boarding area. We also have a prep area, dog washing areas, wash down booths. We have some laundry space. We have a grooming area in this area. And then we have some dog kennels located here and dog run kennels located in this area. There's multiple places where the animals can move, the canines can move around. There's enough space. Some of these spaces could be increased to manipulate it. We've gone through a number of design layouts for the, logistics of how you move through the space, how you move the animals through the space. As far as sound, I had indicated in the letter back to the town, as far as, I'm not a sound engineer, as far as STC ratings that we pulled off of Google, the exterior walls are a masonry material, so it's 8-10 inches of solid brick, and the 8 inches of the CMU wall, the STC rating is a 42. For a typical 2x4 wall with 5/8 sheetrock on it and pink bat insulation will give you a STC rating of 34 to 39. So just the wall in itself is better than your typical house wall with insulation. And as Doctor had indicated, to better enhance the sound absorption in this space, we're going to line the interior with another set of walls, another wood frame or metal stud wall with that 5/8 chipboard and the insulation to give a greater sound rating. We do have windows around the perimeter, as I indicated before, mostly on the side and on 6th. There's limited windows in the back. This area over here is where surgery is not really allowed space. The area in here is another treatment area. So those windows will be frosted so we could have natural light in it, but you can't see through the windows. So we'll have a film on the window that would allow natural light to come in, so that way, it's less use with lights and everything else. The building will be all energy efficient appliances with the use of LED lighting, the rooftop equipment, which will be screened. One of the questions earlier from the board was there a special filtration system. In the other facilities that we did, there is a special HEPA filter system that are designed for the animal facilities, and those filters are changed frequently and are designed to take the odor out of the air, similar to a cigar bar, where you're trying to, in a smoking environment, where you're taking the particles out of the air. So that will be designed as part of the building. Move on to the next exhibit where we have the roof plan. And the roof plan, again, is existing. We are not increasing the height of the building. We're not increasing the footprint of the building in any way. We're just repairing it and trying to restore it back to its original glory. The existing roof will be re-roofed with a UPVM or a rubber roof. There are areas where we will have new rooftop equipment. Those rooftop equipment will be screened so that it will not be visible right up there. Screened from the street and from the public view. So that area could grow, it could decrease depending on the amount of equipment we have on the roof, but it'll be a metal screening area. There'll be a flat horizontal line similar to the parapet around the building that exists now. This exhibit, TV3, shows you the Memorial Ave side, the 6th Ave side. You have the front entrance here, and one of the comments were indicated for the entrance here was the ramp. The handicap ramp has, as we were depicting right now, a metal railing going up the ramp and at the top of the platform. Suggestion was made to have a masonry enclosure instead of the rail. We have no objection to that. Instead of just putting the masonry rail at the ramp, I would suggest enclosing the entire platform and stair with the masonry so it's consistent with the whole building. Another question was with respect to the signage. We have the City by the Sea sign, a main sign here that is 54 over 53 square feet. It's an illuminated box sign, and the owner has indicated signage on each of the corners of the building, as well as the sign that matches the front sign of the green entrance on the 6th Ave side. We have, one of the comments were the amount of signage, and especially on the corners, where the corners of the building are rounded. We have no objection to eliminating these rounded signs that are located on the corners of the building, so we can, there's no conflict with this wall surface that's being applied to. We still have, we added 3 awnings on the front of that, and I think it might be easier to see the color that way. There are 3 awnings on there just to enhance the appearance of the front facade, denoting entry. So when you walk around this building, it's a very beige color building. It has beautiful terracotta accents along the top. On top of the pilasters, you have your typical Art Deco style caps and piers. So the building is really not super ornate. It's very simple, but we're trying to keep the simplicity to that. And by adding the color, actually the color of the City by the Sea logo, the blue, we felt was, it worked very well with the other 2 colors involved in the facade. We would like to keep that, if worst case scenario, just over the main entrance. If you really object to it, we'll pull the canopies off, but we feel that it's a minor addition to the exterior of the building that helps identify where the entrance of the building is. And I'm going to switch over to sheet TV4, which is the other 2 sides of the building, the rear and the left side of the building. So the rear has, you can see the glass, we have the surgery and the treatment rooms back in here. Those windows will be frosted, so that way people can't see them. Also the areas where the dog play areas, those windows will be frosted too, so people aren't looking in the windows, but the animals will get a lot of natural light. And then the same thing on this side where we do have those dog runs back here, the play areas, the cattery, which is over here, and then the training area in this. So again, we have large rectangular windows similar to what was there previously, and the repair of all of the brick and facade treatments. You can see there is a thin line at the top of the building which denotes the mechanical roof screening. So you'll just see something off in the center of the building that would be away from the edges, but would shield and screen the rooftop units. That concludes my brief overview of what we are proposing tonight.
Okay. Board members? Questions?
So Dr. Tom had said that inside there would be an area for the dogs to relieve themselves. What section would it be in that big play area in the back right? Is it going to be in there?
Well, the animals will probably relieve themselves as they play and they move around in the facility. So there's enough room that they're not on top of each other, so if an animal relieves himself, I'm sure the staff can kind of move the animals away while they clean it up and continue their business. And as you can see, I have one for the larger dogs and one for the smaller dogs. And they're both pretty sizable spaces.
Okay. Was it? Go ahead.
Okay. Can you tell me about what the difference, like what's going on in these dog runs? You mentioned that they were cages, but I don't know what they are.
Okay, so
they're called dog runs.
Dog runs here is essentially, whenever, and this is from my experience with other facilities, the doctor could correct me if I'm out of line, where they'll move a dog into these larger areas. We have the longer runs. In other facilities I did up in Maine, they actually bathed the animals there, so there was like a larger shower for bigger dogs. And they're not in a cage, it's in like a pen, more or less. That's what that really would be. So it gives the animals enough room to move around if they're not really contained. These other areas up here in the dog lodging, rather than keeping an animal overnight in a cage, the animal has its own room. I take our pets to a facility in Millstone, it's like going to the Borgata. It's incredible. Where the dog has its little room, and he comes out, they take him out for an hour. Our dog will play for an hour, and then they'll put them back in. People walk by, it's got like a half door on it. So very successful in the other facilities that I've seen, and what Dr. Tom is trying to do here at this facility.
Oh, well, I would really feel better if you could provide us with some illustrations of what you're talking about. I mean, your architectural plans schematically are fine, but we really can't get an appreciation for the spatial concepts of what the animals will be going through. Okay, especially when you talk about the dog run and then those 4 spots in the corner of the dog run.
Over here, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these 4 spots are essentially like a kennel, almost like they're cyclone pens in pens. So the animal will basically stay in there with a chain link gate on there. They'll take the animal out, They would either bathe him, treat him, I don't know what procedures may happen in that room, but there's enough room in that space for the technician to work with the animal, and they're not tight. So, if I'm saying it. So that's really what that is. Those 4 little rectangles, that's essentially a chain link penned area. They have drains in there in case the animals go to the bathroom. They could wash it down or pick it up. And then the animals come out and they'll treat the animals in here. And that's why he gives them, he has a lot of different options on how we can treat the animals in the space. And everybody's going, all the animals are going to one spot. He's got a spot here, he's got a spot here, and he's got a spot there.
And how many dogs? So there'll be 4 dogs in that area at one time.
At a maximum. So, I mean, in the past, what I've seen with the veterinarians, they limit the amount of time animals are next to each other. They try to keep them one bay apart because you don't want them, either sniffing each other. So, very rare that I have seen that the animals are all caged in there. I had indicated that I had done animal shelters. Animal shelters, they do that, unfortunately, because they don't have the space. The doctor has the space in this facility where he can space the animals out if needed.
So the dogs will still be leashed while they're in there unless they're in the cage.
I'm sorry, sir.
They'll still be on a leash while they're in there unless they're in the cage.
They're free. I don't know if they're probably still on a leash. I don't know when they come out or the person goes in to get them. I don't know the logistics.
No, there would be no leash. No leash, okay.
They would just be in that pen area.
Okay, was there any thought given to maybe putting the dog run on top of the building?
On top of the building?
Yep.
We didn't. We really wanted to contain the noise and everything inside the building. So if we go up on top of the roof, now we have the animals barking outside. So we thought it was a better solution. Try to keep them inside. We have the space in the building, so that's why we tried to create those spaces to contain that kind of activity.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. On the area that's between where the cats are lodging and the dogs are playing, I know that there was testimony initially that you were trying to keep the noise down so that they don't bother each other.
Right.
Will that area have more soundproofing, that wall have more soundproofing than other areas?
Absolutely, because it'll drive the dogs and cats crazy.
So
we'll probably have a block wall between them. That will be an enhanced setup between those 2 rooms. No matter how much we try in almost 12,000 square feet, you wind up in an area where dogs and cats are going to be next to each other.
So if you could just tell me where else will there be additional soundproofing within the building, not outside the building, but inside between walls?
Right.
Where else besides that one?
That is the one area that we have the dogs and cats right next to each other. So that is primarily the one area that we can foresee you need enhanced soundproofing in the wall.
So you wouldn't need it between the dog run and where the cages are? You wouldn't need it between the dog run and the park and the private grooming?
We don't believe so. The grooming is pretty much the same animals. So the dog's barking, the dog's barking. You might have an animal walking down the hallway. There's a cat and a dog, as long as they're not sharing the hallway at the same time.
All right, so there's only one wall that you're going to do extra soundproofing on?
That we anticipate right now, yes.
Are you going to do a study on, and I don't know, Michael, this might be a question for you. Is there some kind of sound study that can be done? So we know exactly what's.
I'm just going to help. It's his thing.
I know there's a light study, and I don't know if there's a sound.
So there's statutory limits on sound pressure emissions at a residential property line from a non-residential use. You could try to emulate it you could try to model it in advance, but it's essentially what happens is somebody thinks they're going to handle it. They build and they develop, and then if there's a complaint afterwards, it's measured, or it's measured post-construction at the property line, and there's mitigation measures that would be required if they did not meet those standards.
So there's already standards that they have to meet.
There's state standards, yes.
For a
non-residential use,
next to residential.
sound emitting at a residential property line, which would be either the southern property line or the western property.
But that doesn't take into account a lot of animals. That's just a standard.
It's a standard for airborne sounds, and it doesn't talk about whether or not it's from an animal or not.
Or a machine or.
No.
What kind of mitigation measures could you take after the fact?
Well, I mean, they could be relatively simple. I mean, if you have a lot of room, what we've seen in other cases where sound attenuation walls have been built within a site, and that, you know, let's say that you built a block wall and then you added some sort of padding or something in the inside, so that adds to that. Within a building, there are windows. I mean, we see multifamily housing built all the time near highways and other places that generate noise routinely, and those buildings are built with specialized windows, which is probably a good idea here.
It's a good idea. The windows, those windows in those dog areas, and I would suggest a triple glazed window there for the sound. We've done townhouses on the parkway, literally on the parkway, apartments on trains, where they have the enhanced STC rated windows, where it's a triple glazed versus a double glazed, and it does improve the amount of sound transmission or lack thereof through the glass.
The real trick is to identify any of these places where sound can get out, and how are you going to deal with it, right? So the windows, the doors, any vents or anything that's coming up, penetrations through the roof, any place where you might get sound. Same thing for odors.
I have a question too, just on the general layout of when you're looking at your areas, is it safe to say that where the top part of your plan that's your noisier area versus the other side where all your exam rooms are?
I really don't believe so, because when you have, in the center area, you have the dog grooming area, we have a food prep and storage area, we just have a wash down booth. The area that can have the most sound, I believe, would be in the dog play area.
What's the reasoning for putting that, the noisiest parts of the practice closest to your property line where there's residential properties? The way you're orienting the building. There's only 11 feet on that side of the building. Why not just flip the whole thing the other way?
And to piggyback that off that, the dog lounging is, I think that's what I'm most worried about, and that's, again, nearest the residential property line.
This one here?
So it's that whole L is kind of like the noisiest part, and it's the closest to the nearby residence.
Yeah, on both sides.
Well, we have the front of the building here, so that's your main entrance. To have this up front, it's really the back of the house. This is where
your parking lot's on the bottom.
Down here.
Yeah, put all that stuff next to your parking lot.
Okay. That's something I can review with Dr. Tom.
Just a suggestion.
Just flipping the two, I mean, if that's a concern of the board.
Right, because the other thing that kind of piggybacks onto that is also that when you're looking at your PB4, which shows you the part that's facing the backyards on Sunset. So what's going on with those windows? Are those, no, the next one, if you just break it down, right there, the bottom of that, that's what's facing the backyards with the houses on Sunset.
Right.
Are those windows the ones that are going to be frosted, or because you hadn't mentioned that?
We're all going to be frosted where we have the animal. We're all going to be frosted where we're treating animals or animals.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't be treating them. This is where they're running, they're playing, and they're lodging.
As it stands now.
Correct.
As it stands today, that's where they're playing and lodging.
So right here, this whole area is playing, and this is the cats. This is training, this is the cats, this is small dogs, and this.
Okay, so what's going to happen with those windows? Are they going to be see-through?
No, we're going to.
Are they going to be all frosted?
Going to be frosted.
All right, so everything facing someone's backyard will be frosted.
Correct.
And everything facing, if we go to the item on top, no, you're still on the same one. That one, the one on top is the one that's facing the multi-story unit residential. So are all of those also going to be frosted?
Because these are dog areas as well. We're going to have the boarding spaces here. This will be the surgery and treatment area.
So pretty much all the windows are going to be frosted?
The two sides.
On the two sides that are facing residential?
Correct. And then the ones that are not frosted will be facing the street and the neighborhoods.
So the south facing and the west facing walls.
Right, south and west are going to be frosted.
Yeah, the opposite walls other than Memorial and 6th will be frosted.
All right,
And even if you relocate those,
if we relocate them to the street sides, I'm going to have the frosted glass facing the street and the veterinarian rooms facing the residential. So that's what, one of the reasons we thought it would be better to have that on the opposite side of the building, so you have all that natural light and the exam rooms open to the street.
And perhaps this is a question for your planner, but what are the setbacks? What are we even looking at? Like, how close are you to the nearby properties?
And I have to let the engineer.
Our engineer will address that
Okay.
momentarily, if that's
That'd be
okay.
great.
Okay, have you thought about noise that would come from the school itself, okay? You have a baseball field, you have a football field. You know, we're discussing noise that would be reverberating from the inside, but what about exciting the dogs with noise that comes from the outside of the building? Not, like I say from a football game, a soccer game, or baseball game, where there's cheering, horns blowing, you know, excitement going on.
The same shielding from noise from in and out is going to be out to in, so the animals will have some buffer from that noise outside. They definitely have more sensitive hearing and smell. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to have a sound engineer discuss that.
I didn't think of that. That's a great point, but I live on Deal Lake Drive and I can hear the Friday night games and the marching band and the drum
That's
line.
right, the marching band too. It
Yeah.
comes over there too, right?
Yeah, so I mean.
Yeah, I have a dog. I've had her. She's going to be 16, and the only thing that really gets her going is fireworks.
Well,
Fireworks and
all due respect, there's probably puppies here that
I'm sure there's
are a little more hyper than.
Yeah, I mean, I would look into probably putting those windows all the way around.
Yeah,
the frosted glass.
Yeah.
Oh, or the triple glass.
the triple
glaze,
pane.
Triple
Okay.
glaze all the way around.
That's fair.
And-
You have to take something there, especially the band, okay?
They'll probably gather on 6.
Yeah,
I don't know how thick, I'm not an architect, I don't know, but is there a way to even make the walls thicker?
We are making them thicker. So you have the existing masonry wall there that's about 8 to 10 inches thick, and we're going to build another wall inside, increasing the thickness of the wall and the SDC rating on the wall. So we're going to build a wall inside as well.
So you have a 42 rating before you build the extra wall.
Correct. That was what the standard 8-inch
Right,
concrete
with
block
the
unit. And then we're going to
insulation.
build another wall in front of it.
And you're gonna do another wall that's, what's that rated?
That would be a standard 2x4 wall, I indicated, 5/8 chipboard, both sides, it's another 34 to 39 rating. So you're increasing, I don't know if you add
Got
the
about a
two.
good 80 rating now.
Can you speak like layman's terms? What does that mean?
That is the sound transmission.
No, I know, but like, what does that mean? Am I hearing, are you able to hear the train outside?
So we all have a house, our normal walls in our house are 2x4s with half-inch sheetrock on the inside and half-inch plywood on the outside. So you have a feeling of what you can hear through your walls right now in your own home. And that's less than having 5/8 on each side. So if you were in an apartment building, our standard apartment building demising walls between 2 units would be typically 2 walls with 5/8 chipboard and the 1-inch airspace with insulation. And that meets all sound requirements. And we've done multiple townhouses in apartment buildings where that has been sufficient. Now there's times where you have impact sound, that's ITC. That's when you're knocking on the wall, someone walking on the floor above you. That's even harder to control because it just runs right through your materials.
Maybe to help us out, as you mentioned, is that you're saying that if you're at home, what's the rating? Because we're dealing with ratings now. You're doing with 42, 39. What's that rating?
Yeah, your
When you're at
house,
home.
I think it's a standard 2x4 wall with 5/8 sheetrock on each side and insulation in the wall. That's a 34 to 39.
All right, so when you're home, your normal home, generally for all of us, it's a 39. So you're talking about double.
It's probably more than 34 because you don't have 5/8 sheathing on either side. You have half-inch on each side. So it's probably slightly less. So it's in that 34 to 39.
I think it depends though. I live in a
Yeah.
1930s building. I think it's different than.
We're just trying to give an overall.
Yeah.
If it's wood, lath, and plaster, it's going to be a higher rated SDC.
And what is the number again going to be?
It would be 34 to 39 is a standard wood stud wall. So we're going to put like a wall like that inside the building in front of the existing masonry wall, which is a 42.
So, okay.
Plus that 1-inch airspace, again, will absorb some of the sound as well.
So in your opinion, will the pets hear the train that goes by?
I believe the pets, I can't testify on what an animal can hear, but I know they have better hearing than we do. So I assume they would hear things.
Well, actually, that you make a very good point because outside of the band and the football and the baseball and the
Sirens?
you
That's
have the thing that's continuous is railroad. That's continuous. That will just keep happening. So, all right.
we can ask
Yeah.
Doctor.
Yeah.
How do the pets react now when the train comes by?
And why don't you come on up into the mic, speak into the mic. Outside of the building is obviously when they're coming into the clinic, when we see them mostly reacting. But honestly, when they're inside the exam room, they're so distracted by everything else going on or inside the clinic. I don't hear the train, and I don't see them reacting to the train because there's so much other ambient noise within the clinic anyway. So I would anticipate we have the same.
What about when they're staying overnight though? That's my
So-
concern is the neighbors that
Right.
are next door trying to sleep.
Mhm.
The band's going off on Friday
Sure.
night when they're staying there, all weekend boarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of how, I know that we don't have a problem now, but I also know that there's ways that we can, so for our current operation, we also have like white noise machines, things like that in our euthanasia room to just help some of those pets be a little bit more comfortable if needed. We haven't had complaints, so, and I don't hear it being a problem. Otherwise, I would be looking for a new location, honestly.
But you don't have any pets staying overnight right now.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, we're open late though, and we do hear the train. We're same distance to the
Yeah, so
train.
you're same distance to the train, but you're just closer to the high school.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, still, I feel like, yeah, I see your concern. And I would see how overnight could be a little bit different, but I feel like there would be ways that we could address that if we need to as well.
Yeah, I have full trust that I can tell that you care a lot about your business and the animals, but you have to remember too, when we give this approval, this stays with the land forever.
Mm-hmm.
So another veterinarian could come in and not do those things that, I think you will do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think, what can we do while you're actually not demoing, but renovating the building?
Right.
What are some things that we can, require so that the future tenant or,
Would take up that flag, yeah.
not just leave it to,
Sure.
more reactionary, if the, what's something you get ahead of it instead of just reacting to it.
I understand.
But I don't know architecture, so I don't know what the answer is here.
What am I saying? I'm going to make a suggestion because I feel like we don't have all the technical expertise sitting here that we might need for the board to have an opinion about whether or not what Mr. Test is saying is going to be effective or not, is that we reserve that. And I can have an architect from my office, we do multifamily as well, give us some insight into what these ratings mean and where they might be, rather than trying to guess. If that's something you want to do.
Dan, what do you think?
Or even see like,
Yeah, I agree. Good, I'm sorry.
there's a lot of dog places around, like doggy daycare places. I've used them in the past, I haven't used them in a while, but I can say that going in or being outside of them, I don't hear what's going on. So I'm sure there's a standard for this kind of facility. What it is, I don't know, and maybe they can help with that. I do think there are ways that it can be completely soundproof from the inside out, where you won't hear it on the outside. But again, maybe you can help with that.
I think we need to do a little digging on our side just to understand and be able to understand if there's an approval, if the correct condition can be made.
Yeah, but would your office be able to lend us a hand with that?
That's where I'm going to start.
That's where we want to start, so that we want to be coming back anyway. Okay, so anything that you can do to help us along with that?
We certainly will.
Deeply appreciate, because we're not just dealing with, like Brittany said, we're not just dealing with the present, we're dealing with the future.
We're in it for the long run, but I absolutely understand that any approval runs with the land. We will get additional information. We will work with Mr. Sullivan, and we will address your concerns.
Yeah, and we also have to look out for the children coming
Sure.
out of school and the people who live on Sunset Avenue.
Absolutely.
And the people who live on Drury Lane. So there's a lot going on here at one time. That's not an area that's dormant at all. I mean, once you kick in Burger King, okay, Dunkin' Donuts, Frank's Deli, all of a sudden that's a very busy area year round. It's not just for the summertime. So we have to look out for everybody, and we would like you to have a successful business, but we have to look into all the
Sure.
factors before we go forward. Okay? All right.
I'm sorry, will you be going over the lighting, or is that going to be the engineer?
Site lighting with the engineer.
Okay.
Okay. We have to go with the professionals. Any more questions?
I do. Let's get back in my notes here. The grooming area. How many, I see there's 4 grooming tables?
We made, amenity for 4 tables.
4 tables and a private grooming area?
That was requested by a doctor, I guess he can explain to who would use that and how they would use it.
So there's a capacity to do 5 grooming operations at one time?
Possibly, yes. I don't know if that's how it operates, but we have the station for 5.
Yeah, I think the testimony was there was 10 per day, but they're an hour appointment. It sounds like there could be a lot more grooming going on with the facility versus the scheduling. And if there's 4, well, this is maybe a...
We can address it if you want.
I just, yeah, I'm trying to reconcile
Got
the
it.
testimony
Sure.
with the facility. So I think you said there's going to be 1 groomer?
That's what we plan on having, yes. If that's initially, I don't know if it changes over time, I wouldn't anticipate it though.
So 1 groomer will use 5 grooming stations? How does that work? I mean, that you understand where I'm going?
No, I do. And I think the plans are more so to show what that space would be utilized as. You know, if we put 1 table in there, we'd probably just have a bigger space for those. But I wouldn't say that those tables are even built to scale for what we're going to be utilized. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have 5. We could have 2 in that area. But we'd have the space for it, I believe, yeah. If we needed it.
I mean, just to be clear, this is the representation that is being made about what the building is going to do. So if it's not going to be that, then this is what this board is going to base a decision on. So that's why we're asking these questions.
We could pull the tables out of the plan and make the other clarifications.
Do you have floor drains in the areas?
Floor drains throughout.
Floor drains throughout? I tried to identify all the different things that were.
The drains go into a common point where you have a grinder, so the hair and stuff like that will be ground out before it gets put back into the system. So that's what we've done in the past.
Is the grinder within the building or is it in the site outside?
We have it in the building.
It's in the building? Well, I appreciate your, you responded to some of our comments in the letter by your direct testimony. So we made comments about the building and the style of the building and how we think that the ramp could be resolved so that it doesn't compromise the style of the street. And I agree with what you said in terms of extending the wall and making that symmetrical. So I agree with that. The signs that are on the ends, I agree with that. I still have an issue with the awnings, and it's only the design of the awning. It's not the color of the awning. And that it's a very modern feature that comes onto, and it overhangs the window, and the window bands are very distinctive. They're part of the horizontality of this style. And while I would love to see a different style of awning that would be more akin to more of a flat industrial look that might fit that horizontal emphasis on this building.
I'd be willing to work with you to come up with a solution.
Right.
That's okay.
But it's not the color. I'm okay with the color. But I think it shouldn't come down below the windows because then you lose the geometry of that, and I think it should come up. So I'd like to see that, and I hope that can happen. The air filters, what type of air filters are you using?
I don't have the exact term, but I know we've used it on the facilities, like a HEPA filter, so it's made for the absorption of particles, it's odor, and like I said, we use it a lot in cigar lounges and things, those kind of facilities. It's a very similar system.
So is it a charcoal filter?
I guess. I mean, I don't know if I can get you the exact specs to look for.
So the questions I would ask are, what type of filter is it? What's the efficacy? Does it have multiple, filters in there? We talk about filtering a lot when we deal with these marijuana businesses that are starting to go around. And the best filters have, a series of these charcoal filters, and they're being pulled and they're swapped out and things like that. But they're a very high level of filter. So the schedule for that is interesting. When do they change? Is there a regular schedule? How often do they need to be changed? And also, where would the venting be? Would there be a vent point?
With all the equipment on the roof would handle all that. So it come, exhausting into the unit and evaporate out into the air. So we'd be drawing fresh air into the building and exhausting air back out. In that area, we'll go through the filtration system.
Is the screen that's around the rooftop equipment visible on these elevations? Can you point out to me?
You're kind of far away. It's kind of grayed in the back here. It would be a flat metal panel screen, and horizontal. I don't want to really draw attention to it with accent, but
I can understand.
What's it gonna look like to that bottom one?
it's going to be the same color. It'll match the color of the building. So we'll have that.
So all the equipment will be screened from the backyard to the
You'll see in the equipment, you'll see a metal wall. That'll be up 18 feet.
Does the screening fully surround the equipment, or is it only?
It'll be open to the backside one. There's a section of the roof that slopes up that's not going to be visible. So it would be screened all the way around it to basically keep it not visible from the street. I'm going to need an access point to get in there, so there might be a space in that overlap so you can get around it. But that once we design the equipment, we'll know how large it is and to what extent we're bringing it around.
So that equipment, it's going to be on the roof. What level of trying to understand the comparison between the size and the noise compared to a residential unit that might be located somewhere here?
Typical residential units like 3 tons.
Mhm.
These will probably be a grouping of smaller 5-ton units. It's not going to be, I'd rather have smaller units. It's easier to compartmentalize the spaces with the smaller units. So it'd be very similar to a residential size, residential size unit. A lot of larger homes have 2 3-ton units, like a 3,000 square foot house. They'll have a 2 3-ton or a 2 5-ton. These will just be a series of 5-ton units.
And so what you're saying, if I'm reading this diagram correctly, there's the U-shaped element is the screen that you're talking about that faces 6th Avenue?
Yes, 6th Avenue, and again, we have this roof area. We weren't able to get up on the roof because the roof wasn't really that safe. So when we get up there and we determine what the height of this ridge actually is, because it's being screened by the higher parapet in the front, if it's not high enough to screen the wall, we'll continue our screening. That will be completely concealed from the street.
Because I think that we still also need to see how far it is, because we have no idea how far it is from the edge at this point. We have no idea, unless you do, because.
No, this is just a representation. We don't know how much.
So when you know, that's what, we'll need to know what it is before we approve something, to understand. Because my other concern would be, outside of the screening that you want to see from the side, there is a multi-floor unit right next door. What are they going to see? Because it's not just the apartments. There's a unit right there. And what will the people see from Sunset? What will those people see on the roof? So it's not only what you'll see from when you're walking around the building, from the high school.
I'm concerned about the residents around
Right.
this building, which that's what.
Yeah, so we're going to need to see a revised plan. I'm not going to say we can't go forward tonight, because I do want the public to ask questions if they have any questions right now with this part. But we're going to need a revised plan and an update, because we just can't go forward with this, because this is something that we've never faced before. I mean, the last dog place that I remember was on Asbury Avenue, Dr. Ripp's building, where the old Carvel used to be. So, I mean, And that's the history of Asbury Park. And we're talking about bathing dogs, water going into the sewage, which I understand, okay? But the air filtration, especially with, the smell, and I have a hard time believing that there's not going to be an odor. How that's going to be handled is extremely important, especially to the people in the neighborhood. So we're definitely going to need an update and maybe even a study on it. You think a study? So, do we need a study on that?
I'm sorry, I was.
In reference to the air filtration, will we need a study on that?
I don't know that we need a study. I think that if there's information that could be provided on the models and the system that's going to be used, I think that that's probably sufficient and some analogous use.
And the other question is even with the filters, how the filters are going to be disposed of. When you're in an area like this, disposal of the filters, are they put in the plastic bag and just dumped in the garbage? Are they recycled? That's important also, sir. Okay. Any other questions from the professionals? Any questions from the public? Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, now, Mr. Beekman, and do we have time to go forward with another testimony or what?
Well, I mean, generally, the board goes until 10 o'clock, correct?
Right.
I mean, obviously, the applicant can make a decision as to whether he wants to proceed or not, or...
We would respectfully encourage, would like to proceed if you all have the time, knowing that we're going to have to come back, obviously.
Okay, so right now we will be listening to Mr. Thomas Mueller.
Yes, our civil engineer.
Okay, thank you. We would like to have him sworn, please.
Mr. Mueller, you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And if you can state your name and spell it for the record as well?
Thomas Mueller, M-U-L-L-E-R.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
like that, the qualifications, sir?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Tom Mueller. I'm with the firm Dynamic Engineering Consultants. I'm the civil engineer for the project. Graduated from Rutgers University with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, as well as a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering. Currently employed by Dynamic Engineering as a senior principal. I have over 10 years of experience with Dynamic, over 12 years of experience in the civil engineering field. I presented to countless numbers of planning and zoning boards throughout the state. This is my first opportunity to be in front of the city zoning board. Appreciate the opportunity. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in good standing. And
Mr. Chairman, I would accept that the board accept the qualifications of my witness.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. You may proceed.
thank you.
Thank you. Just to begin with,
Mr. Kennedy, again, just want to make sure, do we have any plans that we have to mark, or has everything already been submitted as part of the application?
This has already been submitted and distributed to the board members.
Great, thank you.
okay. So Tom, you're obviously familiar with the application,
Yes,
and you're familiar, your office prepared the engineering plans,
yes.
and you were here for the testimony of the other witnesses tonight, so why don't you dispense with formalities and talk about the engineering details of this proposal?
Absolutely. Usually I have the opportunity to go first in a normal application. We heard from some great testimony with the doctor and the architect, Mr. Testa, so I'll skip over a lot of the basics that I usually go through, but what you see on the easel as well as on the TV on the wall is just an aerial map exhibit. It's prepared by our office. Just simply shows a colorized version of the existing conditions on the site. The site is colored in the yellow. The ring that you see around the site is a 200-foot buffer around the site, so you can see the surrounding uses immediately around the site. This exhibit shows the different zones, one for the property itself as well as for the surrounding zones. Subject property is Block 103, Lot 4. It's identified as 1411 Memorial Drive in the city of Asbury Park. It's a square-shaped lot. We have frontage on Memorial Drive, about 150 linear feet, as well as about 150 linear feet of frontage on 6th Avenue, both of which are municipal roads. Property is only about 22,500 square feet, so this is a very small site. Under existing conditions, I believe we all know it's a vacant facility. It's dilapidated, it has vandalism, there's broken windows, there's doors missing, there's plywood blocking the windows and vacant areas of the building. To my knowledge, it was previously used as an automobile parts and service business, which is not permitted in the R1 zone. However, under existing conditions, it is vacant, essentially abandoned. There is temporary construction fence around the building. There's no maintenance whatsoever in terms of the vegetation on site. It's severely overgrown. I think it goes without saying that this is certainly an eyesore, and rehabilitating this site is certainly a welcome change to this particular piece of property.
I stopped you right there, sorry to mid-stream, but do you know how long this has been abandoned?
Don't know how long it's been abandoned. It's a very old building. I believe it was built in the 40s, but I don't know how long it's been abandoned.
Is that something that architect, sorry, you know?
We'll find out.
All right, thank you.
And just in terms of the zoning on site, you'll hear from the project planner, but I'll touch on a few of the items throughout my normal testimony here. But this is in the R1 single-family residential zone, which essentially only permits single-family dwellings, as well as essential municipal uses. We are proposing a veterinary clinic, which is not permitted, which requires a use variance, obviously, from this board. The existing use, however, is also not permitted. Mechanic shops or automobile repair is not permitted. It is vacant, however, so we do recognize that. In terms of the surrounding uses, this exhibit is oriented so the north is on the right edge of the page. So on the north side of the site, which is at the right side of the page, we have a P4 school zone, which is obviously the Asbury Park High School and the stadium and sports field. You could also see that beyond the high school is Deal Lake, and then we have the borough of Interlaken immediately beyond that. To the east of our site, we have the R1 single-family zone, as well as portions of the B zone and portions of the Main Street redevelopment zone along Memorial Drive. To the east, we do have Memorial Drive, and then immediately beyond that, we have the New Jersey Transit rail line, which we could hear in the background right now. Beyond that, we have a number of commercial uses like McDonald's, graphics, print shop, Dunkin' Donuts. To the south, we have the R1 zone and the B zone beyond that. We have residential uses immediately to the south of us. However, beyond that, we do have a number of commercial uses. On the left side of the screen, you could see the shopping center with the angled parking and loading in the rear, which the current use is actually operating in that building. So you could see how close in proximity that the proposed site is to the existing operation. To the west is also the R1 zone and a number of residential and multifamily uses. Beyond that is Drury Lane and the Asbury Park High School. I'm just going to switch over to proposed conditions. On the easel now, it's just a site plan rendering prepared by our office, dated April 2nd, 2022. This was submitted as recently as part of the application documents. It's a single site plan rendering. This is simply just a colorized version of the site plan layout with the landscaping design overlaid. You can see the different land covers. The building itself is an orange color. The asphalt that's being proposed is a darker gray color. And then obviously we have the green open space areas and landscaping shown on this plan. This plan has the same north arrow orientation as the aerial map I just showed. North is to the right side of the page, and then east is to the bottom of the page. So what we're doing here tonight is obviously you're seeking preliminary and final site plan approval and use variance approval with associated bulk variances. Just from a high level view of this project, we're looking to repurpose this 11,968 square foot building. We heard testimony about the operations of this building and the architectural design of this building in great detail, so I'm not going to dig in on any of that. We are proposing 2 new driveways, one that connects to Memorial Drive and then one that connects to 6th Avenue. Just in terms of the overall site plan layout, as you can see, we're reusing this existing building. So there's very limited site work that's being proposed as part of this project. We're looking at constructing a new driveway on Memorial Drive, which is 16 feet in width. It's a one-way drive aisle that hugs the northern edge of that building, forcing traffic to travel to the west of the site. And then we have one egress driveway on 6th Avenue, which allows vehicles to make a right or left back onto 6th Avenue to exit the site. So this is a one-way maneuver. As vehicles enter off of Memorial Drive, they're they have the option to park in those angled parking stalls. There's 6 total angled parking stalls, angled at a 60-degree angle. And then there's a 16-foot wide drive aisle that feeds those parking stalls. And then as you make your way to the west of the site, which is the top of the page, we have 4 perpendicular parking stalls, which would be served through the drive aisle immediately to the east of those. We are proposing a refuse area on the west side of the building, which is, again, the top of the page. You can see on this exhibit 4 squares. They're drawn at 3 by 3 feet. And as I mentioned, there's 4 total of those. We did work with the operator on determining an appropriate number of refuse enclosures for this use. They are shown on the page, top of the page there. Feeding that area, you could see that on the top of the page, there's a sidewalk that runs along the western edge of the site. Beyond that sidewalk is a 6-foot high vinyl fence, solid vinyl fence. And beyond that 6-foot vinyl fence on our property, we are proposing a number of arborvitae shrubs along that property line to help buffer the building and the refuse from the adjacent properties. That sidewalk does allow the operator to bring those refuse receptacles out to 6th Avenue, which they can then be picked up by a private hauler that would be under the control of the operator. One of the comments we received as part of the professional review letters was to provide a bike rack on site. Speaking with the applicant, he's more than amenable to provide that, so we'd work with your board professionals to locate an appropriate location for that. We are also proposing to replace all the sidewalk along the frontages that's damaged. We would attempt to maintain any of the existing sidewalk that's in good condition, but anything that's demolished or in poor condition would be rebuilt to the satisfaction of the city engineer. Just to quickly go through some of the zoning setbacks, I heard a question about where this building is really oriented on the site, and it's absolutely an important thing to go over. The applicant's planner will also go through this a little bit, but in terms of the minimum lot area, the ordinance requires a minimum of 5,000 square feet for minimum lot area. The site is 22,500 square feet, so this complies with the minimum lot area requirement. The minimum lot width requirement is 50 feet, and as I mentioned, we have 150 feet of lot width for the site, which complies. The front yard setback on 6th Avenue is required to be 25 feet. Under existing and proposed conditions, the building is set back 37.7 feet from 6th Avenue. And again, 6th Avenue is on the right side of the page here, so it is compliant. On the front yard setback from Memorial Drive on the bottom of the page, 25 feet is required, 17.9 feet exists. And we are exacerbating that variance as a result of the decorative canopies. So we're proposing currently a 14.8 foot setback to Memorial Drive. And again, the physical building's not getting closer to Memorial Drive. It's really just a result of the 3 architectural awnings that we'll be working with your board engineer and planner to refine the design as we move forward with this project. The rear yard setback requirement is 25 feet, whereas 11.3 feet is existing. That's not changing at all as part of the project. And the side yard required setback is 6 feet, whereas 11.9 feet exists. So this project complies with the side yard setback. There's a minor floor area ratio.
Wait, go ahead. Since it's a corner lot, what's the rear yard?
The rear is on the left of this exhibit, which would be the southern property line. And then the side yard would be the western, which is on the top of the page.
Okay, can you say those numbers one more time?
Yep, on the top of the page, which is the western property line, that's the side yard. The requirement is 6 feet, and the building is 11.9 feet from the western property line, so it complies. And then the rear yard, which is on the left side of the exhibit, is a requirement of 25 feet, and the existing building is 11.3 feet from the southern property line. So there's an existing variance there. Just on the floor area ratio, under existing condition, there's a minor floor area ratio variance. 0.5 is permitted. A total of 0.53 exists. It's not being, the building's not being increased in size, as I mentioned, so we're not exacerbating that variance. 0.53 would be an existing nonconformity. The maximum building coverage on site is 30% permitted, and we're proposing 53.2%. And again, That's an existing condition. There's an impervious coverage variance on this project. 65% is permitted, 77.7% is proposed. It's about 17,400 square feet of total impervious coverage on the site. The majority of that impervious coverage is a result of the existing building. You can see the gray hatching on this exhibit shows the proposed parking area. And it's really just a result of us providing the maximum amount of on-site parking that we can. We do have a traffic engineer that's going to touch a little bit more on our parking situation, but the result of that impervious coverage variance is really just a result of us trying to provide as much on-site parking as possible. The building height is compliant with the zoning ordinance. 30 feet and 2.5 stories is allowed. This building is only 1 story and much less than 30 feet in height. And then the maximum accessory building height is 15 feet, but there are no accessory buildings proposed on this project. Just in terms of the parking, I touched on this already. There is an interesting calculation that is a result of this project. It's a very unique use. There is some question as to how the parking is calculated on the site. Our traffic engineer will get into that in great detail, but just in terms of what we are providing, we're providing a total of 10 parking stalls on site. As I mentioned, 6 of them are angled and 4 of them are perpendicular on the top of the page. They're all 9 feet wide by 18 feet long, which complies with the city ordinance. The drive aisles are 16 feet wide, which also complies with the city ordinance. We're providing one new ADA parking stall, which would be compliant with federal guideline. We're providing traffic striping and signage throughout the site to provide safe and efficient maneuvering through the site and onto the adjacent roadway network. We're also designing this project to have clear sight triangles to provide safe exiting movements and entering movements into the site. In terms of loading, there is a variance required for this project. The city ordinance requires 1 loading space for use of this nature. No loading spaces are provided. I think you heard some very good testimony from Dr. Tom about his actual operation on the loading. It's just very limited UPS deliveries, very short nature. We're not seeing tractor trailers here or extremely large vehicles. It's just small medical and office deliveries throughout the course of the week. So the fact that we don't have a loading zone on this site technically is a variance, but it really is not necessary for a use of this nature. In terms of access, I mentioned we do have 1 ingress on Memorial and 1 egress on 6th Avenue. There is a waiver associated with the width of the drive aisle on Memorial Drive. The ordinance requires, I believe, 18 feet wide driveway onto the site, but the drive aisle itself is allowed to be 16 feet. So what we did here was we continued that 16-foot drive aisle to connect to Memorial Drive. That's really a result of the narrowness of the site and what we have left over for the parking area in terms of the setback from the building to the property line. So it is technically a design waiver. However, in my professional opinion, this site will still operate as intended, and the minor deviation there is not a substantial detriment to the site design. In terms of grading and stormwater management, this is a minor development as defined by state legislation as well as city ordinance. We are disturbing much less than an acre of land, and we're providing much less than a 1/4 acre of new impervious coverage. We are designing this project to have new on-site conveyance, which would drain stormwater runoff to a proposed underground stormwater detention basin. I am familiar with the city ordinance, which indicates potential requirements for providing green infrastructure on the site. We did go out to the site and perform a number of test pits on site to establish the existing soil conditions. There's a very, very, very shallow seasonal high groundwater table on this site. It's only about 2 feet deep, extremely limited. So green infrastructure techniques really require us to have a deeper groundwater table. So what you see on the plan now, you don't see any green infrastructure simply because it's not possible with the separation to seasonal high water table that would be required. However, the applicant did request a relief from the city's stormwater ordinance because of that condition, but we would be more than happy to work with the board engineer to come up with hopefully a solution that attempts to address the green infrastructure rule while still managing the guideline that the state requires us to design around. So technically a deviation would still be required, but we'd be certainly welcome to working with him and your board professionals to establish something that could resemble green infrastructure on this project. In terms of utilities, the site's already serviced by electric, gas, sewer, and water through public connections to adjacent infrastructure. I believe one of the board professionals' comments was to confirm the demand for this site, so we'd be happy to work with the applicant and your board professionals to confirm that the existing services for the site will be sufficient for the proposed use. In terms of landscaping and buffering, I mentioned before on the top of the page, the western side of the site, we are proposing a 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence along that property line to help shield the site and that small refuse area. We're providing a mixture of evergreen shrubs throughout the site and along Memorial Drive and 6th Avenue. In total, we have 44 total plantings. We're proposing 2 shade trees, American sycamore, which will be provided in line on 6th Avenue to kind of follow that existing tree line on 6th Avenue. And then we have 42 evergreen shrubs throughout the site, mostly around the perimeter of the parking area to help shield the actual visual impact of those parking stalls and shield the actual parking area itself from the adjacent right-of-ways. It's important to note that some of those shrubs are actually in the right-of-way, so the applicant is more than happy to work with the city professionals and any kind of necessary access agreement to maintain those. The applicant will be responsible for maintaining that shrubbery within the right-of-way, so it's not going to be a burden put on the city. In terms of lighting, all the lighting will be LED efficient lighting, all modern lights. The light fixtures will be mounted 9 feet on the building and 14 feet within the area lights within the site. As I mentioned, 14 total light fixtures are being proposed, 2 area lights within the parking field, and then 12 wall sconces on the building, which are illustrated on the site plan. These are all LED lights. However, we did work with the board professionals early on in the project in an attempt to provide an architectural light. These are not just ugly box lights. They're very architecturally pleasantly looking lights. They're kind of a bell-shaped light, downward facing. They're not floodlights or anything. We show construction detail for our lights on our plan. And then the wall-mounted lights are just really a very modest can light that's essentially put on the building. It's a wall sconce. It's very architecturally pleasing. Again, it's not a floodlight or an area light. It meshes very well with the design of the building facade. We do have a few design exceptions for the lighting levels on the site. We're providing a minimum of 0.5 foot candles throughout the site, an average of 2.49 foot candles, a minimum of 0 foot candles along the rear building, and a maximum of 7.8 foot candles. The city ordinance has a number of design guidelines for the parking areas. For instance, a minimum light level of 0.5 foot candles, an average level of illumination not to exceed 1 foot candle, and a maximum ratio of 10:1 for maximum to minimum light levels, and a uniformity light level of 4:1. So this project is very close in establishing a light level that matches that ordinance. However, some of those thresholds are exceeded slightly as part of this project. And again, it's really just a result of the small nature of this site. There's no significant spillover to adjacent properties. It's all downward facing immediately just to serve the purposes of the parking area and walkways into the building. And it will not create a substantial impact to the surrounding area. Just in terms of signage, Mr. Testa touched on this already. There are no monument signs proposed. We're limiting this design to just simply facade mounted signage, which Mr. Testa went into great detail on. Just in terms of other outside agency approvals, this project did receive exemption from the Monmouth County Planning Board. And we do have a pending application with the Freehold Soil Conservation District. And I am familiar with the list of city officials that are required to approve this project through your board engineer's review letter, which we'd be happy to pursue as part of this project. That really summarizes everything from a civil engineering perspective. I'd be happy to get into anything in more detail, or if I missed anything, be happy to go through that.
Do you have any questions from the board members?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The lighting, that was a lot of information, and thank you, it was very informative, but our planners report. Talked about the lighting, color, temperature. Did you address that?
Yep, the light that we're proposing is 3,000, and I think the ordinance requirement is 2,700. So it really is a negligible difference, but if the color of the light is a condition that the board would like us to revise, we could certainly choose a different light fixture that would provide the color of 2,700. But in my opinion, it's something that you wouldn't even notice 2,700 versus 3,000 light
Yeah,
level.
it would limit down the number of design exceptions, which there are a lot. So I think some of these 5.3.5, the wall mounted lighting, there's no visible lamp. Michael, maybe you can clarify that one. The shielding of the wall mounted lights. In your report.
Oh, yeah. So the requirement is that the lights must be fully shielded. What we're reading from with the plans is that this is a translucent housing. It's not a fully shielded housing, so that the light is just coming out of the bottom of the top. And so you're going to perceive the light source as this diffuse light source, but with some of it coming at the bottom. Is that a correct explanation?
Yes, exactly. It's an architectural enhancement to the site. It washes up and down on the site, on the facade. So it's technically not compliant with the ordinance because it does have a feature that washes the facade up and down. It's not focused directly down, but it's gonna modestly light the facade of the building. So technically we do require design waiver just because of the architectural decision we made with the project.
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me until just now that it actually does come out of it comes out of the top as well.
Right, and there is a construction.
That would require relief as well.
I have a question too. Are these lights over here as well on the top?
Yes, those are those small wall sconces that we were just talking about. There's a few of them on that side of the building.
Go up and down as well, because
Yeah.
that is abutting another residential house.
Yep, the lighting will be limited to business hours as required by city ordinance, but yes, they're very limited in terms of how much light those put off. And it's really just as a safety feature for business operations, but yes, there are lights on that side of the building.
And what's the height?
9 feet.
9 feet?
Yeah, 9 feet.
So even with the fence, the people next door will see them.
Yeah, we do have an evergreen row there that will eventually mature over time that will block those lights. But yes, they're 9 feet tall on the building.
So I think some of the lights on the western side by the refuse, I believe they're on a timer, but they'll be limited to regular business hours.
Yes, correct.
So what you're saying is when they close at 8 o'clock, those lights will eventually shut down.
Yes.
Soon after people have left the parking lot, not at 8 o'clock exactly, but a little bit after they give people time to get out of the building, when it locks up.
Correct.
One question with the 2 curb cuts, you're eliminating parking space on each street?
There's no formally striped parking on Memorial or 6th Avenue. And there is an existing curb cut on Memorial Drive, so if people do use Memorial to park under existing conditions, I don't think there's any impact to the number of parking stalls on Memorial Drive, but yeah, theoretically, we are losing 1 stall on 6th Avenue as a result of the new driveway.
Yeah, because there's gonna be, as you know, we have a lot to say about the parking.
Yeah.
When that time comes, and so what's being brought up here now is you're saying that, well, there's one less.
Yeah. One less
So
parking space.
everyone matters.
Yeah, I think you'll be happy with our traffic engineer's testimony on that. He did a substantial analysis on that, and he'll provide that.
Getting back to the lighting, to the residents that's to the west, I would request that, and I don't know if the board agrees, is that the hedges that are going to be put in there that will eventually be high enough. I would prefer something that won't be eventual, that'll be when you open. Because we're concerned about all the residents that are around this building, any light, and if that light can be lessened, I would prefer it to be lessened so that you don't have to have an exception. And like was just mentioned, is that you're asking for so many exceptions, perhaps some of these could be, they're not difficult fixes and you won't have to have the exception.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, to that point, it begs the question whether you need decorative lighting on a side that faces, it's 10 feet off the property line facing a house.
Right,
So
or do you just need it so someone can get out to dispose of the refuse?
Yeah, I see no reason
We can figure that
to
out.
keep those lights. We could certainly remove them and have them on a very limited motion sensor just for security.
That would be better.
Yeah, that would be advisable,
Now, you'd also mentioned that the driveway coming in on Memorial was 18 feet, or it's 16, it's 16?
Correct, 16.
Now, I'm not sure, is like, when you're saying it should be 18, is it 18 for 2 cars, or is it 18 for 1, Michael? I'm not sure what the rules are.
I think that's.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Doug. For the driveway that's coming out on 18th, on Memorial, is that going in, is it required to be 18 if you're going 2-way or 1-way? Or does it not matter?
I would have trouble checking that.
Because if it is for 2 cars, well, this is only 1 car is going, so 16 would deal with 16 a little bit better. But I'm also thinking that if 18 is the number, put on either side is not going to be that big of an issue to add it. But I don't know what the ordinances are.
So for commercial use, one-way operation, driveway width requirement is 18 feet.
So it is 18. And but the drive aisle is 16. Because you'd mentioned that the drive aisle is 16, and that's okay.
Is there a reason why it's 16?
Yeah, it's really just a technical conundrum here because the ordinance allows a 16-foot drive aisle for the parking on site, but then it's a little bit of a disconnect, to be honest, because then the driveway has to be 18 feet. I could certainly see that working on other sites, but on this project, we just have that 16-foot driveway coming in and serving the parking field, and it'll operate efficiently. As in my professional opinion, it'll still operate. The 2-foot width that you would see on an 18-foot driveway you wouldn't even be able to perceive it, to be honest. So the 16-foot is more than adequate to serve this particular project.
And that would cover up more green space.
Yeah, we would add more, impervious for no reason there, and it really wouldn't work with the layout.
Just to clarify as well, so your ordinance specifies drive aisle width based on the width of the parking stall. So for an 8.5-foot wide parking stall, the requirement is 18. For a 9-foot wide stall, meaning there's a little more room to pull out and maneuver, it is 16 behind the parking stalls.
The other item that when you come back, we're going to be very interested in the stormwater green infrastructure issue because that's kind of like what we do here.
Absolutely.
We love green stormwater infrastructure. So we'd be very interested to when you come back. I'd like to hear about that.
everybody talks about that.
Everybody talks about
Can I just
You may.
make one suggestion on that? And given that you're limited with space and you do have the groundwater issue here, and not to get into the engineering details, but just conceptually, Mr. Testa talked about expanding this wall in the front to be more symmetrical and larger to enclose the front area to hide the ramp. But from an architectural standpoint, it makes sense to do it on both sides. Could one of the sides that's not the ramp, could that be a place where you actually can build a place to put roof runoff or something into that's above, that gives you more height above the groundwater table to get some, and maybe that's green infrastructure.
Yeah, appreciate that input. Absolutely. We could definitely look into an option.
I don't know how the downspouts work on this building, but
yeah, we could certainly look into that.
Rather than, I don't know what else there is to do there or what other opportunities you have.
So I like the parking lot. Did answer a question about what we had. So we started questioning parking, but what surface are you going to be using?
Asphalt.
purpose of the island next to that last angled spot near the exit?
Just to provide a little more green space, gives us the opportunity to put a few shrubs there and just break up the parking a little bit.
So does that, like, in what the percentage to go off of that is like, there's a certain percentage you mentioned that was impervious,
Correct.
that it had to be. Can you go over those numbers again?
Yeah, 65, the ordinance contemplates 65% total in the R1 zone.
All right, so we should be 65 and we are
At 77.7%.
77%. Okay. So you're 12% off, and this little jutting island, is that counted as part of that?
Yeah, it's considered pervious area,
All right,
so
so that counts into this 77%?
yes.
So that's
No, it's not part of the 77. It's part of
part of
the.
65?
It's part of the. It's part of the 22% of pervious on site.
And so how much pervious do we need?
I don't think the ordinance has a minimum pervious requirement, to my knowledge.
I think part of this discussion may be about the percentage of the parking area that is landscaped.
Oh, okay, so that's something.
So there is a requirement for that.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we can save that for the parking.
It will be next time.
It will be next time.
Dr. Tom, but I don't want to mess up your last name. Okay. Do you plan to put a chain across the entrance and the exit of the parking lot?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, when you're not in use, when you're not open, you plan to chain off the entrance and the exit from the parking lot?
Did not have plans to do so, no.
Oh, because what I perceive, okay, is the way parking is in Asbury.
People will park there.
Okay, you can have a popcorn game going on Sunday, and most of the people say no parking. Now, so I'm not saying the neighborhood can't use it. It's nice if they could use it, but I'm just looking at liability on your part if somebody uses your parking lot.
Or maybe just signage.
Yeah, signage would.
Telling, yeah, telling signage.
Okay, thank you.
And I have another question for you, since you're up.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so I know you testified to the security that would be going on the property. So do you have any plans? I know you said you abide by city code, but are you going to keep any of those lights, especially near the front doors, on at all times?
Within the proposed, would we keep lights on?
Like near the front doors or near the parking lot? Would any of those lights be on all night just for?
Based on our previous discussion, we didn't want to affect the neighbors with lights that go on throughout the night. So while those lights would be on a few hours after, just to allow our employees to get out and get home, nothing would be on overnight, no.
Will you have any video surveillance outside? Any cameras?
I would like to, yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And two other things that we have, that you've spoken about bike racks.
Mm-hmm.
Since 40% of your employees bike, I would assume that you're talking about more than one.
More than
Wherever
one bike
you're
rack.
gonna put it,
Yes.
that's gonna be more than one. And you'll show that to us next time you're back. And also, I would question where the refuse is going to go on the day of pickup, because I would really hate to be a resident and have to be next to that garbage for however long that is. Because sometimes they don't pick it up right away. So if it can be moved perhaps on the other side of the driveway to be away from the home that's there, the residence. So it's always to the right side of the driveway, not to the left side of the driveway, to keep it away from that residence, if that would be possible.
Because most people do put the garbage out the night before.
Right, so.
They are.
And they're still being stored on the west side? The garbage?
Yes.
Is there any other possible location?
We could circle back with the team internally and see if we can move the location of those.
Okay. Anything from the professionals? Anything else from the board?
I do have a question about the bicycle storage. It's for the doctor. Do you have an idea where the best place on this site would be for bicycle storage? I mean, since it's not on the plan now, I mean.
Right. I would suspect for our employees on the west side, because that's most likely where our employees are going to be entering the building. And then for clients, I would suspect that we could hopefully put it, just on the opposite side, on the east side, somewhere hopefully in that grassy area, if possible. I mean, it seems like the most obvious place for me.
You're going to need more impervious surface to put that in. Just be thoughtful about it.
Okay.
And one of the things that if you really want to encourage people to use bicycles, normally you create something that's weather protected. So I don't know if everybody rides in there. If that's the way you get around, then you're going to ride whether it's good weather or bad. So.
This is going to sound condescending, I don't mean it that way, but do people really ride their bikes with their dogs?
I've seen several. Sure. Yeah, and I think if we encourage it, I think they would. Asbury Park's that kind of city.
Okay. I just didn't know how much of a need. I mean, I get your staff, but like my puppy's sick, I'm not going to go over the railroad tracks in my basket.
Of course.
And one other thing that since I'm guessing that when people are coming with their pet, coming in the front door, can you have something that has like, bags so that they can,
yes,
because they're going to be walking, whether you want them to or not.
I understand.
They're going to be walking. So having some disposable bags,
100%.
a place for them to.
Probably on both sides of the building we would have.
Right, and have a place for them to garbage.
Yes, absolutely. We have it in our current location.
Also, the city has those great things with the bags. Maybe you can work with them and get one or two put on the corners. And I mean, because there's even residents in the area that are walking their dogs. Just something to encourage the picking up and dividing.
Yes, absolutely. We have it at our current location. They're definitely used.
That'd be great.
By folks that I think are not even our clients, but that's okay too.
Wow. The parking lot just made me happy, okay?
Thank you.
Football.
I'm a retired athletic director.
I know, right?
Okay. Okay, do we have any questions from the public? Mr. Lafredo? Almost said mayor.
John Lafredo, 6th Avenue. Thank you. How many exceptions are being asked for in this application? Do we know?
The board engineer, the board planner's letter does a very good job of outlining them. A lot of them will be eliminated as part of our discussions here. So I can't answer the exact number, but that might be a more appropriate question for the next session. We could quantify that based on our revised plans.
That'd be something to know. And then I asked another question. How many of the sycamores are coming out to do this project?
I don't have that number immediately in front of me, but I'd be happy to provide that as part of the next application or next meeting.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I'll be here. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, I think it's kind of late to entertain any other testimony. When can we schedule?
So we have openings in May, but I would like to leave it to Ms. Kurzak because she is our special guest.
Thanks, no pressure.
No pressure.
What dates are you looking
But
at?
I would like to check with you first to see
That's
when.
okay, give me a
you are
date, I can
available.
tell you right now.
Okay, so we have May 10th or May 22nd.
Irene, I'm not going to be here May 10th.
Okay, so May 22nd.
May 22nd, no, that's
Wait.
a Sunday.
That would be a Sunday.
The 24th?
Oh, I'm
24th?
sorry. Am I looking at the wrong? The 24th.
Yeah, 24th would be fine.
All right. How does that sound to you, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes. And knowing that May 24th, and that we'll have to get any revised plans within, and on behalf of my client, I consent to extend the time frame within which the board has to act. And Mr. Chairman, I would ask that this be carried without the need for any further public notice.
And just to clarify, we would require revised plans to be submitted by April 28th. Is that something that would be possible?
If it's not, I'll let you know, but revised plans submitted. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the board's interest and attention to detail. I expected nothing less. I realize that it is the utmost important that any use you approve has to be fit in with and consistent with and respectful of the surrounding uses, including particularly the residential uses. I took extensive notes as to some of the additional clarifications and revisions and technical issues that you want addressed, and we will have that for you.
Mr. Kennedy,
Sorry.
Mr. Kennedy, I just would suggest that perhaps your professionals speak with the board's professionals, because there are some discrepancies about some of the waivers as well as some of the variances as to which fronted or which rear, which sides, some other things. So we want to clarify a few things.
Just to clarify, it's the yard that's furthest from the front yard. In this case, because it's a square lot, take your pick.
Okay. Oh, it is square.
It's square.
Oh, okay.
150 feet. So.
Good idea. We appreciate that, and we will absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Can we get a motion to carry to May 24th, 2022 without further notice?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Danielle Harris and a second by Tim Flick. Thank you. And Danielle Harris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brittany Ashman?
Yes.
Tim Flick?
Yes.
Bonnie Knox?
Yes.
And Barbara Krizak?
Yes.
Thank you. Application carried to May 24th, 2022.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank everybody for staying this late hour and come over to this dinner. No, I have. Okay, can we get a motion to close, please?
Mr. Harris, and can we get it? Are you making a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Barbara Krizak.
Second.
Thank you, Bonnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.